This episode of the Brewtally Speaking podcast is brought to you by On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point with their line of pomades and beard oils over at onpointpomade.com. Use our code BSP15 at checkout and get 15% off your total purchase order. So thanks again to On Point Pomade for sponsoring our show. This episode is also sponsored by the Bean Bastard Coffee. Head over to thebeanbastard.com and pick up any one of their delicious hand-roasted coffees. Coffee lovers will also enjoy their hand-cut and handmade espresso candles and soaps as well. If you're in the Buffalo, New York area, head to their store located at 448 Elmwood Avenue. And thanks again to the Bean Bastard for supporting this show. The Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. With over 500,000 officially licensed items in their online store, you're guaranteed to find something you need. Use our code BREWtally and get 10% off your total purchase order. Now on to the show.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard. And you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give
up. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Brewtally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Jeff Howard. This was a guest I've been after for a while in so many different capacities, trying to go through management, trying to go through friend of friends, just hitting Jeff up personally on his Twitch stream a while ago when he first kind of started doing that. And it finally happened. And, you know, it's something I've said countless times doing this show, where it's one of those where sometimes, you know, you want the guest so bad and you know, you're so close to getting someone to come on the show and it just doesn't happen. And you kind of feel this sense of, you know, this kind of sense of like, man, what the fuck? Like, what's wrong with me? Why isn't it happening? You know, it seems like it's never going to, and you kind of get this self-doubt, this pessimistic attitude kind of toward these things because life isn't working the way you want it to. And time again, doing this podcast, it has reminded me and shown me that life will happen when you're ready for these experiences, when you're ready to have them, and that when they do happen, almost always, the experiences are far and above what you would have been able to do because you have more life experiences. You're prepared. You're ready to have this thing, and it's one of those where I feel like this chat with Jeff was definitely that. It definitely, you know, 2 hours, and we cover everything from, you know, the beginning of the band and growing up in Utah to creating art and religion as art, and, you know, having dogs and finding yourself through various ways of self-exploration, whether it be, you know, through psychedelics or other things, and the process of kind of shedding one's ego and kind of getting out of your own way. And I don't think that would have been something that we could have gotten into had I gotten him when I initially had reached out, or, you know, potentially him being on tour or something. I think it kind of needed to happen now, where the two of us were just kind of like, I got some time and there's no rush. And I think that's kind of when this show and this medium works the best, because when you're on a time crunch, you're kind of rushing to get to something, trying to rush to find that connection, trying to make good content, as it were. And it's one of those things where I feel like this medium, when you have time to sit down with someone and have a real conversation, that's when you get to the good stuff. That's when you really find out who someone is. That's when you really start the connection between two people or three people or four people or however many people are in on the conversation. But you need that time to kind of give and take. You know, that's a philosophy and an adage that Dewey from Pure Pleasure has stressed on me, and we talk about it all the time. You need to give sometimes so someone else can take, and you need to take sometimes so someone else can give. It just becomes this thing where I think a lot of us, it's hard for us to do that, and you have to be comfortable with yourself, and you have to own some of your own things and be willing to kind of talk through things. And that is something that this podcast has afforded me so many times over, with the friendships that I've gained from doing this over almost 6 years now, 350 episodes. It's funny, I didn't necessarily think 350 was a milestone, and I forgot I was getting close to it until I'm literally right here. But I think this is a milestone. 350, we're almost to 400. It's just crazy to see how far this thing has come, all because I just decided to do it. I had a passion, I had an idea, and I followed it through. And I think there's kind of that byline through this conversation with Jepha and I. So without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Jepha. It's a long one, and I hope you really enjoy it. I'll see you all on the other side of it.
Going for a while, it just kept fucking up.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny actually, because Dewey and I actually were talking about it yesterday. Because sometimes we'll be talking about like a guest, like we both put out our Billy from A Perfect Circle episodes, and so he was like, "How's yours doing?" And I was like, "Not great." And it's been the running joke though, where a while ago, because he had tried shopping me to the network because he likes what the show is. Yeah. And it turned into this thing where they're like, it seems like you had a bunch of numbers and all that. And I was like, yeah, like 9,000 monthly people stopped listening in the last like 2 years.
What? That's fucked, dude.
And so it's one of those like where, I tell Dewey all the time, I was like, because he's like, well, what's the plan? I go, I don't know, man. I feel like it's sort of like a band thing where you're like, okay, like, a band puts out a record maybe that doesn't hit. And you're like, okay, we loved it. I think it's really good. We still are putting out really great content or great material. Where the fuck did everyone go? And then it's kind of a matter of like, maybe someone will kind of come back on an upswing or something. But at this point, it's just kind of like, it is what it is. And I do it for me, not really for anyone else. And if people come back or people find it, that's all I really can hope for. But I still get something out of this personally every time I do it. So to me, it's still worth doing. It's not about, the accolades or any of that kind of shit. So that's
how my Twitch thing is.
Yeah,
it's really just for me, I was meaning more so. Me and you were supposed to do this interview together, weren't we? And I remember talking to you a long time ago about it, and then I don't know what happened. I think I spaced out, probably. Or maybe you messaged me and I lost it. It's another one because I don't go through my messages very often.
I don't know. In the last couple years, really. Actually, it's funny. I just was talking about it on my socials today. Because there was a bucket list guest I had wanted for a while, which was John Corabi, the other singer of Motley Crue, when Vince left. And
that's cool.
Just did that, a couple hours ago. But that was 5+ years of trying to make it happen, and it finally did. And this podcast, I think, has taught me a valuable life lesson that things will happen when they're supposed to happen, not when you make them happen.
Totally, dude. Sometimes you're trying to make it happen, and you're just fucking shit up. That goes a lot. A lot of shit in my life is like that. The more I force it, the worse it's going to be.
I forget who. I was listening to something yesterday, a podcast, and the person was talking about you kind of receive the energy you're giving, and sometimes, it was Josta from Hatebreed, and he was talking about sometimes you want something so bad that it's almost like the world is kind of like, oh man, you're trying too hard, like you just need to let it happen, and then we'll reward you when it does. And I think in this last year, 2 years or so of kind of going through therapy, having my cards read for the first time.
Hey, cool.
Kind of seems like life is just kind of telling me, and I think a lot of people, if you pay attention to it, to just kind of calm the fuck down and be in the moment.
No, I get that, dude. I think that's pretty well said. Shit's wild right now too. And I feel like things are also kind of fucked all the way around, so everybody doesn't really know what to do right now, We're all trying to figure it out.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and this sounds always kind of weird to kind of say things because it's like, give, a part of your life, especially through the Twitch stream and stuff like that. If I'm not mistaken, you weren't living here in the States. I think you were living somewhere like basically like in the middle of nowhere.
I'm always living in the middle of nowhere. Me and my wife, my wife's Japanese, and her entire family, besides her mom and her little brother, live in Japan. Mm-hmm. So she doesn't really see them ever, so she doesn't really have a big family as far as that goes. It's when I say she doesn't have a big family, I mean she's not super, super close to their family, Mm-hmm. And they're kind of similar with me. I have a really big family, and they're all nice, and I like them all, but I don't really see any. I haven't seen any of them in forever, So I'm not really super close with any of my family, My mom, I have a mom, and I'm somewhat close with her still, but that's kind of it. I'm just not a big family as far as that goes person, and I think that's being that connected with my wife being kind of similar. And being able to live wherever the hell I want because I don't have to go to a day job. I go to a music job, So that putting together. Sorry if I'm ranting or rambling too much.
I have a podcast.
Okay, I have a problem with just rambling on things for a while. But yeah, we've lived all over the place. We lived in Panama for a little while. That was fun. Currently we live in Hawaii currently, but I'm not in Hawaii now. I'm kind of in between going back to Hawaii. It's difficult when you have dogs to go back and forth, Yeah. And so I'm in the middle of nowhere in California. Middle of nowhere being awesome. I mean, that is a positive thing. So
I feel like it seems at times like I'm almost 40, and at this point, like I've kind of, we just bought my wife, just bought the house that I've been living in for 12 years. And, very recently I did like a massive purge of the house, like got a dumpster and just started throwing shit away. It was so rewarding.
Yeah, man.
But the flip side of it was it felt like it was kind of the finality of letting go of things. Like, I moved into this house with two of my close friends who have since passed. And there was still stuff of theirs. And it was one of those where it's like I thought I was fine. And then like, there was kind of that moment, like as I was like tearing down the bar that someone had built when we moved in. And I was like, fuck, I remember like the day I had the keys and my friend and I like came into the house when we weren't supposed to and like had a drink in the basement. Like, this is our house. We're going to do all these things, and having these memories. It's like the memories don't go away, but like you kind of need to move on and kind of start anew or start kind of at a new fresh point. And I feel like at times, you being off the grid a lot and kind of living in some of these remote areas, it seems like you are one of those people who tends to need to center a lot, to kind of like after maybe giving so much of yourself on a tour or something for so many days and giving so much of yourself to all these people, that it seems like you are one that wants to kind of be a recluse and kind of just needs that like reconnecting moment with just nature.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I've never thought about it in that sense, but I think you're right. I mean, I do have a problem with holding on to material objects that have some sort of meaning of the past. You know what I mean? Like something sentimental to me. Like I have dumb shit that I don't know why I still have it. It's just been sitting there. I just, off the subject, but same subject. I just went through a box of used stuff that I've had that I'm like, why the fuck am I saving this?
Can I ask you a question for clarification? Yeah. Used as in your band or used as in things that have been used?
Cool. No, used as in the band. Okay. The band stuff that I was just holding on to, that after a while, it becomes just an object, And I have not serious problem. I have a problem with holding on to certain things, which I need to kind of go through some shit again and throw. I mean, look at right here, right next to me right now. Every single laminate that we've ever used all of them, it's packed completely full. I was thinking about making a poster out of it. I've been trying to work on something for a while with it, but it's like, what, it's cool that I'm collecting those, but as long as it's just that, if it's not, it's like every magazine we've been in or something like I've had shit like that before where I'm like, I just got to throw this away. There's no point. you know, or give them to people who want them, or do something nicer with it. But
That's actually, it's funny you say that. Give it to someone who wants it. It's funny. I kind of had the same thought with a lot of things, like in collecting records and different stuff. It's like sometimes I don't want to say there's an expiration date on things that we possess, but sometimes we only can get so much out of it. And therefore, if it just sits and it's not able to be used in some capacity, it's almost like Toy Story, where it's like you can give it to someone else and it can have a whole new life and a whole new purpose, and it means something more to someone else versus just literally being a thing that you sit at and go, oh yeah, that thing. And it's weird to think about how there are things like that, like something that has no value to you anymore is like priceless to someone else, and it's really weird to kind of think about those things sometimes.
No, you're spot, dude. That's funny. This year I've been doing a lot of that, like giving stuff that I used to care about to people that I know that do care about it, instead of like giving it to like a Goodwill or something. I'd rather give it to like a friend. Like I just gave one of the Twitch streamers that comes and hangs out. They're also a mod. I gave them my 3DS and like 40 games. I was like, I could, like, what else am I going to do? I don't play this anymore. It's kind of old for me. I've used it as much as I possibly could. The thing was super used, but I gave it to them and they were super happy because it was all these games I never played. And I did that with a bunch. So I had like all of the used records, and I have all the used record, like B-sides and like super rare stuff. You know what I mean? Stuff that you can't find because they're 20 plus years old. You know what I mean? 22 technically now. But yeah, so I gave all of that to a friend of mine who was a big used fan that I didn't realize he was a used fan because I've known him for so long, but he sent me a picture of his house and he had all of our records on the wall. So I was like, oh, dude, here. And I just sent him a box, like a huge box of records, like random stuff that he could never find anymore. And it's like, I'm just holding on to this. I don't need to own this stuff. It's better somebody like that who really appreciates it.
It's interesting when you do things like that, because I feel like it kind of feels this reserve of like, I don't know if like karmic points is a thing, but it's funny that it's funny that when you do stuff like that, it's like, I don't know, it just kind of gives you this like little boost. Like I remember, like I said, we just bought this house and I was tearing up all the carpet through most of the house. And as you can kind of see in the background, the wood floors, that actually runs throughout most of the house.
Looks great.
And was one of those things I was like, holy shit, this is really a really awesome find. And I thought it went into the dining room, and then I tore up a little section of it and realized it was not. It was subfloor, and I was like, fuck, we need a floor. Yeah. So I had a friend come and do it because I'm not inclined with any of that stuff. And it was one of those, like, between him and a couple other of my close friends, they pretty much did it all for free. Like, we bought the product and everything.
Awesome, man.
And when my best friend was leaving, he had asked me if I was going to sell my Switch a while ago because I was just like, I bought it. I don't really like it. I don't really use it. And then so when he was leaving, I was like, here, man, you can have this. And he was like, really? It's like, that's like $300. I was like, you just put in a fucking floor in my house. That probably would cost me that. So like, have it, dude. Yeah. Like,
that's cool. Me nothing. That's cool. And that guy's going to probably use it forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Him and his kid play it all the time.
See, that's how you do it, man. That's how you do it. I'm all about that. Giving, what are you going to do? Sell it to somebody online or something? Like you just give it to someone who's going to use it and is going to be just as happy. They did you a favor and you're doing them a favor. It's fucking awesome.
Well, I think everyone in today's age, like it feels like I don't know if it's a thing about people our age or a little bit older where it's like we remember doing things out of the kindness of our heart. We didn't do it for clout on social media. We just did things. And you lived a certain way, and it was kind of, everyone tried to be on the up and up and as admirable as you could be as a person. And really the only value of anything you had and a social status was literally, are you a good person? Because if that's the currency that you have. And I feel like when we do these things, everyone's always kind of like, what's the catch? And it's like, there's not a fucking catch. And I feel like social media and kind of doing things for the good of someone else or just to do something because you realize it's worth it. I feel like it has been kind of, I don't know. I've been trying to think about this. Like where did the waiting for the other foot to drop kind of expectations start coming from? Where did that happen in the disconnect between, the just doing things because you're trying to be nice for someone.
Yeah, that is weird. Now, hold on one second. Something's driving me crazy. I don't know if you can hear it. It's driving me goddamn crazy. There we go. Okay, the fan was on in the other room, and I felt like it was blowing up the mic, but
no, I really didn't hear it.
Okay, that's good. It's driving me crazy. I know what you're talking about, though. It's like you see people doing stuff now, and I mean, maybe this is, old guy speak a little bit, dating our ages here somewhat, but you see people doing stuff now. Now they're just doing it for like a picture or like a video or like something that they can post online and, not be in the moment of it, which is kind of a weird vibe. It's being positive just to be positive, being a good person just to be a good person. Is that lost a little bit now? Like, is that kind of what we're talking about?
I mean, kind of, because I mean, like, I know you're probably not as super active on socials as say I am, which I hate that I am as much as I am. But, you see the thing of like someone being like, oh, I gave my leftovers to a homeless person tonight on the way home or whatever. And you're like, could have just done that and not even posted about it. Like, no, totally, that kind of negates the unselfish thing you did by then doing it for, for the gram or for the clout or whatever. And it's like, you don't need to do that.
Here's some food.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah. And I think, and that's the thing that I've been kind of thinking about quite a bit is, even like I said, just in the interactions we have with people, it's like, if you gave something to someone, there would have been a time where no one would have thought much of it or wouldn't have thought there was some sort of strings attached to it. And now you do stuff and everyone's like, well, what's the catch? Why are you doing this? What are you getting out of this? And it's like, when did that switch happen to where that's become the mentality that most people have now?
Yeah, that's tough, man. You're right. That's confusing. There's also so many words. There's so many scams that are going around too, It's like the combination of all of it put together makes it really difficult to navigate. Like what charities are the best ones? You have to really research to find out the good charities because you're going to get scammed, or
I feel like that's not something I've really contemplated, but I guess it is actually right. I mean, not trying to drum up any negativity or anything, but totally. You have like the people who, when Black Lives Matter came out, and then you have all these people who are trying to shit on it and basically like, it's just like, any of these other shitty organizations that are all about the bottom line and this, that, or the other. They're not helping anyone. And you're just kind of like, I just want to help.
Totally.
I want to help like any of these things, like, Susan G. Komen for a while with the breast cancer awareness. And then you hear like the horror stories about that apparently. And you're like, where the fuck can I go to just help people?
Yeah.
Like it almost feels helpless.
It does get complicated with knowing who to help and how to help them and who is the right person to help. I mean, I'm not the one to answer these questions, I guess, huh?
No,
but
I'm not either.
I guess all you can do is be the best person you can be and try to help as many people as you can help on your way up, and try to connect to the charities that you can recognize are actually doing something and making a difference. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I wonder from a personal perspective, when you reach a certain level of fame and consistency of doing something for so long as you guys have in building a career, is it overwhelming at times to feel that you have, like, I don't know if have to is the right word, but that when you want to kind of do this, that maybe you're giving so much of yourself away, again, kind of going back to that concept of giving yourself away to another part of you and making sure that it's the right fit.
Yeah, it's I mean, that's the most difficult thing, I guess, ultimately. I mean, you're leaving your families and you're leaving whatever behind when you're traveling, obviously, for months on a time. But you also have to deal with something that's a lot, not really talked about, I don't think very much, but the heaviness of, so when you do meet and greets and you meet fans backstage, sometimes people will unload all of their grief onto you, and so you become sort of like a, I don't want to say a secondary psychologist, but you kind of become somewhat of a
cut rate psychologist.
Yeah, like you're helping. You like we did something and we put an emotion into it, and that emotion from the songs and the music grew to something else almost, and it expanded to something else. And people, it's kind of like any art. This is the way I look at it. I mean, look at this behind me, right? See Mickey Mouse right there
on a cross. Yeah,
on a cross, right? You could take that so many different ways, right? I don't know exactly what the artist was doing when he did it, but like your representation of what that means to you could be totally different depending on if maybe you're super Christian and maybe, or maybe you hate mice, or I don't know, what I'm saying? Like each person's, it takes what I always say is art and artists, it takes 50% of each to make the thing a whole, right? So when we're playing live shows, the fans are so excited to see us, and they're putting in that much energy from the show, and they're singing along and like helping the actual show itself get better, right? And if we're up there, we're playing the songs and we're trying to put in our vibe as much as we can. But if you take any of those out, if you take the band out and it's just people standing there yelling at nothing, it doesn't work as much, or if you take all the fans away and it's just the band there, it's still not as, it's not as expansive. It's not as extreme. It's not as intact.
I think it's as fulfilling on either side.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. And that's, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but that's,
sorry.
What was I talking about?
I mean, kind of just, initially you had started with, at the meet and greets and stuff, and people kind of bearing themselves to you nightly in relation to the art and all that you've made. And then I think you were kind of trying to make the connection between, it's kind of a necessary thing because, they build upon what you've done, but you also feed off of what they give to you. And
yeah, I was kind of adding to that, their interaction with the art. Yeah, however it is, they have their personal views on what that art means and how it connected to them that I won't have, because I'm looking at that same piece of art from a different angle, or from, even though I was maybe part of the creator or whatnot. So when you have sometimes meeting fans after the show or before the show, or, just randomly on the street or whatever, talking to them, there is a chance that they've had these built up emotions that they've been thinking about and things that have happened in their life, good and bad. And something that has connected with them so deeply on like a soul level, that is almost no one on earth they can talk to and understand about that emotion, because they've connected so strongly with that song and that vibe that in some sense we're the only person they could connect to about that thing that has happened. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so sometimes you get, and I mean, I'm not saying this is a bad thing at all. I'm saying over the years, you really learn how to be acceptance of some of the emotion that spills out, right? Like someone's like parent or loved one maybe has passed away, and maybe that's something that the song is connected to. Mm-hmm. And so they would come up to you and they would talk to you about that person, you know what I mean? And understanding about them. Like we've had countless things that have happened like this that are very, I mean, it's amazing to be a part of someone's life so strongly, but on the other end, I have to also somewhat protect myself a little bit, like I have to kind of harden my soul a little bit from some of these things. And I try to get as emotionally involved. Am I kind of ranting too much? Or you understand where I'm coming from?
No, because when you're done, I have exactly a thing to continue this that I've talked about.
Yeah, I have a friend who was a tattoo artist that had to stop tattooing because they had a similar problem. You know what I'm talking about, right?
100%.
Or they were getting the same kind of thing, like someone's like daughter died or son died, and that's what the tattoo was about. And so then while they were getting this tattoo, it was sort of a meditation between the person giving the tattoo and getting the tattoo, and they were unloading all their emotions onto this person, almost like a psychologist, like I was saying, or like a therapist. And I've guessed, as far as a band, we've kind of, I'm sure this happens obviously not with us. It happens with a lot of bands, and it's a very beautiful and cool thing, but it is intense at first, until you can understand it and go with it. Unless you can't, I guess, but sorry.
Well, I think, actually it's funny you kind of got there. Like, that's something I've talked about quite a bit between, artists and even tattoo artists. Like, I've had one of my tattoo artists on the show, and one of the things we talked about was, tattooing as a whole, culturally, in pop culture, at least here in the States, kind of with the shows of like Ink Master and so forth, and some of these reality shows, tattooing wasn't necessarily about like a like everything had to be so super deep meaning. Like, I mean, literally the one I have on my shoulder, I went to St. Louis and I just wanted a keepsake of like my time in St. Louis. So totally, it's like I get like little jammers of like when I go to remind me of like the city I went to. Mm-hmm. And some people, I hear all the time, I wish I could just get little things like that. I'm like, you could. They're like, oh, but it doesn't mean anything. I go, it does. Like, the trip meant something to me. I got a little keepsake.
Totally.
But tattooing, I think, by and large, culturally has turned into this thing because of those kind of shows where it's like, okay, what's the most fucked up thing that happened to you? Now we're going to basically sort of commemorate it or do something to that effect. Yeah. And, like, even with talking with my tattoo artist, I was, for the podcast, I had made the comment, I was like, I feel like it's got to be hard for you because you're just, you're a conduit basically of someone's idea, and then you're, literally putting it on their body forever. And it is a painful experience, and that's part of the process. And I think that's why some of us tend to go to extremes with it, because it is a little bit of a cathartic experience to get this thing and go through it. But also, you have to hear these stories day in and day out. Like, if I had to listen to, and as he then relayed, he goes, I had a lady come in, she was older, probably like 60 something, getting her first tattoo. It was pretty big. And I was like, oh, so, like, what made you decide to finally get a tattoo? And she was like, I left my husband, who abused me for like our whole marriage, and was just going on and on about it. And it's like, and then I was like, what does that do to you? Like, I mean, I can't imagine if that was kind of my job and like the things I had to experience during it, like going home then to your spouse or significant other or a roommate. It's like, well, I don't really want to bum someone out with that same story, but it kind of makes you realize like you're then just taking that in, and you're having no outlet yourself for that. And like, what does that do to you? How does that stunt maybe the relationships that you have, or maybe you don't even want to open up to anyone because you feel like it's a burden of yourself onto someone else.
Definitely.
So I feel like I've constantly talked about, and actually I did with John from John Karabi from Ex Motley Crue. They did a song on the record he put out called Uncle Jack, where it was about his uncle that molested his sister. And all this kind of stuff. And I was like, back when that record came out in 94, maybe outside of Jonathan Davis, like on the first Korn record, no one was talking about stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what was the reaction? And is it kind of tough, because people will then come to you and go, you gave me the outlet, you gave me the voice to talk about these things and so forth. And I go, and it's great, but I mean, what does that do to you? Because like, I feel like you kind of expelled on record the thing that you were feeling in that moment, but now you're perpetually having to live in that. And that's got to be hard to live in a moment that could have been, in some situations 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, no, you're right, man. I mean, I think ultimately it's the least I can do, and I'm saying I'm not ragging on anybody that wants to unload on me and tell me anything that happened in their life. That's what those meet and greets are for, really. That's what meeting us after the show is for. That's what getting a chance to talk to us. That's what that's for, and I've learned to accept that over the years more so. I think it's like, so I play bass in a band, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a carpenter. I'm not like a heart surgeon. You know what I'm saying? Like, what I do, like, over time is a lot like mentally easier in some ways and physically easier in some ways than other jobs, And so for me, just being a human and trying to do the best I can as being a human and trying to excel me as a human. I've said human 3 times there, but you know what I'm saying? But trying to excel myself to be the best I can be that is part of what it takes for me to be there, and so I'm all about it. If it is a lot sometimes, and sometimes it gets pretty heavy. I mean, we have ashes that we've carried around for I don't know how many years, and similar story. A huge used fan ended up passing away, and her mom knew that she was a huge used fan, like massive used fan. And so she came to the show with her ashes and brought her ashes to the show after we played. And so it was like her last used show is what she was saying. And then she like gave us a bunch of her ashes and put some of the ashes on the front of our bus. It's pretty heavy stuff, Yeah. And so since then we've had the ashes with us. I put it in our dressing room case, and I put it on the wall in the dressing room case. So every time we open it up, like she's right there hanging out with us, it's kind of the least, I mean, it's heavy, obviously. Yeah, it's heavy stuff. You know what I'm saying? But it's kind of the least I can do in that sense. It's just part of the whole. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's going to take me a second just to kind of.
You're good. I'm sorry. Maybe I should have got so dark there for a second.
No,
but,
I mean
the meaning is positive. The wholeness of it is there, but it is pretty heavy. I mean, we've all had those love and loss and those things, but when it comes to something like that, and you're a part of it, even though you're not really a part of it, acceptance is kind of the only way through that, I think. But maybe a lot of bands don't take it to heart as much as we do. But we really feel for our fans,
I feel like,
and people in general, but
humans.
Humans.
I feel like that's, you used a good term there, full circle. I feel like that is one of those where maybe the missing of families, the missing of birthdays, the missing of other things that you're doing because of the extraordinary circumstances of what your job is and what it entails. That's kind of the thing that kind of using this analogy, kind of recenters and refocuses everyone, or it has the ability to.
Yeah, that definitely adds crazy to it. I mean, it does suck. I mean, I've missed my wife's birthday probably. God, at least I've been with her for 14 years now, and I've probably missed like 10 of them. I know her birthday is in July, and July is always touring time, always touring time. So that's been pretty heavy for sure. But what can I do?
This is something as someone who's married myself and I've been with my wife a little over 12 years. We've been married going on 7 in December. It's one of those things that when I have people on who have been in long relationships and kind of ones that can put extra stress and strain on a relationship, I sometimes, if the person is willing to, like to kind of delve into that a little bit and just kind of get some advice, I guess, where it's like, what do you do then that allows the relationship not to get fractured and cause maybe resentment or jealousy for, in the experience? Because I feel like all of us go through that in different capacities. So, anytime I can talk to someone can just bestow some wisdom, I think it's worth it to ask.
I'm not the best at wisdom. I'm social. I'm not social. I've got my emotions as a human are pretty slim. So, but as far as things go that I've had to go through and other people that I've seen have to go through, it takes a lot of trust. And it takes a lot of the right person, because being gone for months at a time, not everyone can handle, obviously, and somewhat things happen all the time. You could be in Europe and your phone's not around or something, or you can't make a phone call because you're on a plane for 15, 20 hours, depending, and something crazy could happen, and you can't deal with it. So whatever your partner has to be equally as strong as you are in a different way, almost more so. And I'm lucky that my wife is definitely the strongest in the family. She definitely is a very tough person, and I'm very lucky to have found someone that is stronger than me in every single way.
I think it's one of those that as I've gone longer into our relationship, I was actually talking about it in the other episode that I did today, recorded, and I was like, life sometimes has a way of throwing people together that you don't think you're going to work, but then there's some intangible between the two of you that like you both like. I joked, I was like, a lot of people will come to us and be like, oh, your guys' relationship is what I'm looking for, and it's like, well, I don't know what you're looking for because this isn't what we were looking for. Like 100%. Watch this. Bridget, did you expect to be with me or someone like me? She goes, fuck no. And I go, same. So I go, sometimes you have to let go of the preconceived notions of what you think you want out of someone. And you kind of got to start meeting people in the middle and halfway. And it's in sort of doing that, I think, where you start letting down, or not letting down, you let go of the things that don't actually mean anything. And you find the common bond in something that will strengthen your relationship to move forward. And, I think another thing that has helped us, I'll say at least, is, we've gone and endured a lot of things early on in our relationship that I think strengthened us. So when we got tested again in other situations, we kind of had the thing to be like, all right, we made it through this thing. It was hard, but we're here and we can prepare for the next life test, whatever that happens to be. And we'll get through it because we have each other.
Totally. That's a good way to look at it. Honestly, when it breaks down to it, those tests are important, however shitty and difficult they are at the time. They're really important. I mean, because without that test, you couldn't get to the next step, like you're saying. That's exact spot on, man. You're spot on about, like, my wife is so different than me and so similar in so many ways. Like, she's like a surfer, like that's what she does. She surfs. Like, she loves surfing. You can't get me into the ocean. You know what I mean? And if you did, I'm not going to go very far. I can't swim, like I used to go to the beach and watch her surf, and I would take a bass and just jam the whole time, and it was fun for me because I got to do whatever I wanted, watch the dogs, but we also have so many likes that it's a very weird position. Like, she doesn't like games at all. She doesn't play any games, and that's like a small hobby I got there, so, but she's also super talented at everything, like music. She could pick up any kind of instrument and figure it out, like stuff that I'm like, did you start playing that song you're listening to on guitar right now? Like, how did you do that? I didn't think you could play guitar, just similar stuff that blows my mind, but that's what it takes.
I always like asking this because I always think it's interesting to see where the topic goes. What is something about your partner, and I guess you kind of just said it, but what is something about your partner, your wife, that when... All right, I guess this is always the kind of hard part of when you're doing something and you have no preparation, that you're just like, where's my thought going?
Oh, you're okay, man. It's chill.
But it's one of those, like, for me, like, my wife loves terrible reality TV. I fucking can't stand it.
Yeah.
But I've learned, like a lot of things, that I'm not going to shit on something that gives someone happiness. Totally. Because there's just no point. Like, at the end of the day, it's like, I cannot like that, but I choose to not shit on her thing that brings her some happiness in the hardship of her day. But it's funny because sometimes I'll be watching her watch it, and it makes me kind of laugh, and it sort of encapsulates what I think of my wife, because she hates drama. But I'm like, you thrive and love these shows, which just are all that.
I love that.
And it's funny to see that she finds her center and her balance after a hard day of work doing that. And it's a thing that sometimes I'll watch her, and, it's interesting when I look at her and I think about that, and I just kind of go, you're so interesting, because all of these things kind of don't go together, but it actually kind of perfectly encapsulates you.
I get that. That's cool.
So when you think of your partner, is there something sort of similar where you're just like, when you see them in this moment or in this doing this thing, that it puts a smile on your face and kind of makes you, when you think of her in that situation?
My wife is way more creative than I'll ever be. you know, and I've had to work at playing bass, you know, I've had to work at like listening to music and hearing, you know, I don't have the greatest of ear, you know, but watching my wife do anything and just pick up anything, like she makes these, she makes pottery, you know, and it's fucking fantastic. Some of the shit she makes is all hand built, you know, and she likes stuff that's not perfect, you know, which is so cool. Like she'll make these like little like sake cups that are all tiny. She has like 1,000 of them, you know, and each one is specifically different. You know, she just doesn't make like reprocessed cup over and over again. She makes all these little intricate different things, and she'll spend so much time like carving on each one. But then I'll see her like painting stuff for like hours, you know, or making a bunch of, like, all of our house, there's a bunch of art of hers all over the house. And I mean, seeing her get so excited about stuff like that, just get so focused on this art and creativity. And then my dumb ass over here gets like sucked into like Elden Ring for like fucking 300 hours. You know what I mean? And I'm like, God, man. Like it pushes me in so many different ways. Like I'm not sure if this is fully answering your question, but it is. Watching her do stuff like that sort of makes me want to be better at everything, you know. Makes me want to practice more. I'm like, fuck, I need to stop wasting my time doing this shit and get back on track.
I think it's funny, you know, a lot of times my wife always is like, I'm not very creative. I don't think of things the way you do, or don't see them the way you see them. And, you know, a lot of times, like, I have sort of like your wife, I guess. I have a lot of things I'm interested in, but I'm subpar at a lot of them.
I'm sure you're better than you think.
Photography is becoming one of those things I knew I've always had an eye for it. I just never wanted to invest the money into another hobby. It's like music, really expensive. Record collecting, really expensive. Video games. Like, I chose like 3 of the 4 that are like the most expensive, other than maybe being like, I want to have a ton of kids. But it's one of those where I just never wanted to invest in photography, because it seemed like music and like a lot of these other things, you're always perpetually behind, because by the time you learn how to use what you have, the new thing comes out and you have to change everything and get all the new stuff and all, you know. It just is a kind of a vicious cycle of sorts.
Totally.
But going out, you know, my wife will start going and doing photography stuff like with our phones. And I had her come out with me to Porter from Atreyu's like photography thing he would do when he was on tour.
I love Porter. And he's so nice.
Absolutely. It was really great getting to see him a couple of weeks ago. We went to St. Louis. We followed the tour for a couple of days, and we went out and kind of explored and took some photos of stuff. And it was really interesting because my wife's not to initiate the conversation with people. Like, she knows Porter and knows that he's a great dude, but it really warmed my heart the other day when we were there and she saw him. And then she was like, hey, we went to the arch and we took photos, and like showed her a photo, and she had used a technique of something that Porter had taught her from a couple years ago. And he was like, that's really cool. And And it was like, I was like, that's the first time I've ever seen you do that. Like, you're not that person to be like, I took this photo, look at this. And like, not seeking accolade or anything like that, but just like, because he's excited. the one who taught her to do something like that and look at life from a different perspective. Wow. It was cool. Really kind of an interesting full circle moment there between those two I even texted him when I was like, by the way, my wife never does that. So like, that was really cool to do, and to know that you're a conduit for her to kind of now express herself in a completely different way.
That's super cool. I respect
Porter's
that.
a great dude.
Yeah, Porter's solid. Miss that dude. I haven't seen him for a while.
He still is beardly and bald as ever.
That's great. The best beard. By far the best beard.
And he has so much fun with it. I love when he has a hat on and pull it up and put the hat back down.
Which is a good way to look. That's a good look, I think. I respect that. I don't know if I could handle growing a beard out, but
I feel
you guys are joking?
Yeah.
You were saying you were joking?
Oh, no, we were joking about selling. It was like the day they were on an off date in Detroit, so we went and hooked up with the tour, and it was like the Nothing More Chae dudes, and we were all joking about like meet and greets and things you could do to like generate some extra money. And I was like, well, when are you guys going to start like clipping off parts of your body hair and selling like dime bags of like your hair? And then I was like, I go, Porter would just have to like keep snipping little pieces of his beard. I was like, I wonder how much that would go for. And then Brandon was like, we should do that. Just like randomly one night, don't say anything. Just like clip a piece of beard or whatever, stick it, just put it at the thing and just be like $40 question mark and just see if it sells. And then he was like,
might as well.
And then it started the whole like, what would people buy? Like, what's the weirdest thing you think you could sell on tour? And I was like, man, I don't know.
Just as a joke, yeah. Just
fingernail clippings,
just for fun. There you go. I bet that would. Somebody's definitely done that. Check this out. You might be interested in this. Not you, Ziggy. I found this the other day. I'm going to cover up
the animal.
Some of it. No, not the animal, but I'm going to cover up some of it because it has addresses and phone numbers on it. But that's our old
CDR
demo from before we got signed. That's crazy. But it's not the full one. It only has 6 songs on it. Usually, I think the final one there was like 5 different versions of this, and this one says 2001. So this is a year after we started, which means I think the first one probably said 2000. We've had a weird. I
just saw that
side
tweet.
Story.
Actually,
did you? Oh yeah,
your pinned tweet.
We had it went back and forth. It was so Wikipedia said 2001, and our very first T-shirt we ever made said 2000. But since then, when we make T-shirts, sometimes it gets confused and like the shirt company will add 2001 on it or something like that. And it's been a kind of a constant battle over the past 20 years to try to keep it at 2000. And we recently just had another mistake on a shirt that, when it's because, I go through all the shirts. I make sure the shirts are looking perfect and fine. And so some of that is my fault for missing it. But how many years do I got to check and see if something says 2001 on it, and especially if it's written really small, I'm not going to see it as much. Like our Valentine's shirt that just came out on Valentine's Day. That one says 2001. I didn't notice it until after I got one in the mail. And I was like, motherfucker, God damn it. Again?
Honestly, actually, I'm going to go grab it just for a show and tell thing since we're doing that. So give me a second.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I can still hear you though.
Link.
All right. So it's funny you mentioned, checking the artwork and all that kind of stuff. So one of my favorite bands, Every Time I Die.
Oh, cool. Love those dudes.
So
love that band. Noticed
on a tour, they had this graphic.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I was like, that looks like the intersection. Like that's the front room of the intersection. And then I realized my friend took a photo. That's my friend's photo.
Oh, wild. That's cool.
That's
way cool.
He never got reached out to about it. The company that made it just grabbed it, took out his watermark, altered the image a little bit.
Fucked up.
And that shirt probably for that tour cycle, I think they reprinted it 3 out of the 4 tours they did.
That's fucked up.
And it wasn't until I kind of put 2 and 2 together and I was like, shit. And then I was kind of, because I knew Biggie at the time and I had a kind of personal connect to him when he was still managing them. And having worked at a screen printing company that did stuff for like DGK and, Diamond Supply and a bunch of other like stuff you'll see at the mall, I know that like if they get hit up for anything, typically they'll just be like, sorry, cease and desist, we'll be done. We'll stop making it now and just keep their money. Totally. So I was trying to get it to where I could at least be like, hey, you guys have been selling this. I'm sure if you just give the dude like some money and maybe an acknowledgement on something, like that's probably all he wants. And
I get it.
But then the company, because I did the show review for that show that we took the photo of. So he took the photos and I did the written part. The site that we were writing for was trying to go legal matters with it. And I kept going, you're not going to get anything. Like, trust me. Like by the time you get to something, they'll be like, we stopped printing that. We're not even thinking about it.
Bands are poor too, but you shouldn't fuck bands over. But
no, But it's
I know, that's what I'm
interesting
saying.
that bands don't typically like you usually the band just goes, hey, here's the approved merch designs we came up with for this tour, yay or nay. Yep, looks great to us, cool. And then you just send it to wherever you're touring, and then that's it.
If somebody puts a picture on a shirt like that, like how's the band supposed to know that picture isn't used, isn't property of someone else's? Like the band's not going to know.
Right, 100%.
Yeah.
But I joked, and I was like, what you should do is make that exact same shirt, just use the I, because it's a font and you can't own it. And then just make your own bootleg Eatsid merch, which doesn't have their band name or anything, but it's your photo. Totally. And then he was like, no, I don't want to do that. And he goes, what if they get me for the I? And I go, it's not. And I go, because I learned with the Detroit Tigers, they couldn't go after people making bootleg Detroit Tigers merch with the big D because it was an old English font D. So what they ended up doing was then making their own, trademarking that. And then anytime anyone tried using that, they could then go after them legally.
That makes sense. Yeah.
All the fun things you learn through weird circumstances.
Right. I get that. That's fucked up though. That's fucked. That poor dude. I mean, he should at least, I mean, obviously he should have got paid for it, but at least he should have got credit for it.
No, we both bought the shirt and thought it was funny. We both have never worn it. That's the other funny thing too. Like I've never worn that shirt, but I think it's funny because it indirectly is related to so many changing points for me. Like that show, like I always got asked, why don't you do show reviews? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, how do you do that? How do you get to go do that? And then I got asked to go do that one, and that was my first. And actually, it's up there. So the photo of Keith, I'm bad at this.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I see
there.
it.
So that photo of Keith was from the show, and I had made the comments about, I was told the whole time, our readers don't care about hardcore metal, whatever, it's not the genre people care about. We posted on, I think Thursday. By Saturday, it was like the third most viewed story of that week, or photo set or whatever. So it was kind of like a little moral victory where I was like, people do still care. You just have to like kind of make them want to, or write something worth a shit instead of just like, band played this, it was cool.
I get it. Same thing as anything. I mean, if you don't have substance and it's just words, it goes with music too, I guess, too. If you don't put something into it that is substantial.
Something I like talking about because I find it interesting. A lot of bands, start and/or when they get signed, a lot of bands are not very old, either still in high school, just out of, at a time when you're still growing as a person. And I think for me, that was one of the things that kind of gravitated me toward the band, especially, the Taste of Ink and stuff like that, growing up in a small town myself, where it's like I felt like I was made for more than the city offered me at the time.
I get it.
And seeing, the DVD that came out with the Maybe Memories, where you put a lot of your home videos of you guys like when you first started, is it kind of weird to have so much of your life kind of out there, and that people kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, actually, where people assume they know who you are, but really that was the then you and not who you are now? Is it weird to kind of exist in people's minds in different phases of your own life?
Hold on one second. I got to pee so bad.
You're good. Okay. That matcha tea.
And I was thinking, do I just pee myself or do I wait for a second? But hold on.
Also, I'm drinking tea, not pee. And Powerade.
Okay. Hopefully you can snip that so you don't have to get the question lost if you don't want. But it's funny because you're totally right. People, like it's almost putting out all of the information about us and putting so much stuff of our backgrounds and putting so much stuff of our life, not everything obviously, but just enough so it makes it's very easy to almost think that you know us personally, you know. And that's come up over the years so many times, and maybe that's another connection to how it's very easily for people to sort of unload some of the bad things that have happened, you know. Again, it's all positive, you know. I'm totally cool with all of it. But it has been interesting the way that people talk to us, like, and we've heard this before too. It's people saying, "Oh yeah, it feels like we've known you for years." It's very weird, you know. And it's like for me, like I'm seeing their side, and over the years, I've obviously I can click over to understand their side. It's helped. Funny enough, too. It's helped me. Funny enough. It's helped me a lot because I was a pretty shy kid. I was a very nervous, shy kid, which don't really go together very well, you know. So, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, like, if I would go into like a store and like a cash register would remember me from the day before, I would get fucking so weirded out, you know, and I would not go to that cash register on purpose because of how nervous I would get, you know, which is so stupid. But so now growing up and having people think they know me because they've seen a DVD about me into it, you know what I mean? And they've watched it so many times that it makes them feel like we kind of grew up together, you know? And so them coming and talking to me and telling me these stories like we've been friends forever, and me having to, you know, learn how to accept that and understand that and see their point of view and see their side and to be able to talk through it, you know. like 20 years ago doing an interview would fucking scare the shit out of me, man. like even I was talking about hopefully this is answering your question, but it's also not. It's also going off on a little tangent. But I just did an interview yesterday or the day before with AP Magazine about the used this. So our first record is 20 years old now, right? Yep. And so it was kind of a look back at the first record and things that were going on at that time, recording it, writing it, or having it written, I guess, before we started recording it. But looking back at that, I remember how fucking nervous I was around John Feldman and stuff like that. Recording in front of John Feldman was fucking terrifying, man. It's so terrifying. Like I was like the most you know, if someone would have just hit me on the back hard enough, I probably would have broken a couple bones. I was so tense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I forget the whole ranting point of that, but I've learned over the years for the best how to be a better person because of all these obstacles that have been thrown in my way, which aren't really obstacles to most people, but to someone who's a shy introvert that is, you know, doesn't really talk that much. All of a sudden becoming the opposite is a big deal, you know?
Well, I feel like the thing that's so interesting about the initial concept of when you get signed so young and touring when you're so young, you know, you're just put into this situation that is so not unique in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And you're doing it at a time when you're still figuring out who the fuck you are and what life is. And you're expected to kind of be an adult as much as you can be. And just thinking about these circumstances and situations you find yourself in and how it changes you. Like, and I think actually the fact that you preface sort of by saying that like you were nervous and awkward and all that, and like maybe touring and getting to meet all these people and have these conversations and so forth is what has allowed you to actually branch out and be more of the person maybe you were always meant to be, but wouldn't have been in the environment you were in.
Yeah, if I still lived in Utah and I was this age in Utah without ever touring, I'd be a goddamn million times different person. Like I have no idea what I'd be like. I'm almost terrified to think about it. And I needed something to help me branch out. That's the only way, you know, I needed it. And that's one of the most thankful things I am about the used, obviously, is helping me become somebody better hopefully, at least. You know, we've all made our mistakes. We've all had our ups and downs. We do things we regret. We do things we don't regret, you know, obviously. But in the end, you're just trying to be the best you can be as a person, right? At least the non-psychopaths, you know. Well, I've met the psychopaths that don't realize they're psychopaths for sure. But
what is, you know, kind of speaking, I guess, to 20 years of the thing that changed your life? You know, a lot of people talk about sort of the fatigue of, you know, playing the same songs over and over and over and over for however long. The thing that I find interesting, and the question I'll pose to you, looking back on those songs now that, you know, you wrote from a different point in your life, and, you know, now that they've become what they have, when you listen back to them, how have they changed for you now versus when you wrote them?
Oh, I mean, I've said this before. I mean, these songs, I mean, the first record is, like we were just saying, the first record itself is 20 years old. So the first record is older than some fans that come to shows, you know? like the first record can almost buy alcohol. It can drive. Like, it's, you know, so after after you set something, it's like writing something in stone or setting something in stone, you know? After that first record was made, and not considering all the other records, because this is equal for all records, you know, but once the record is done and made, that's the vibe that existed at that time, right? So you stamp the vibe, you know. I use vibe a lot, and vibe could mean spiritual or non-spiritual. It doesn't really matter, you know, take what you want from that word, but you stamp that vibe into there, right? And then it's done, and that's it. You know, you're not going to go back and edit that. You're not going to go back and redo anything. That's it, you know? And so from there, it takes on a life of its own, and it starts growing and aging, and other people, like I'm saying, you know, the art and the artist, you know, people come and take what they want from it and add to it, you know? So it's having these emotions and these other vibes and these people putting in this effort and changing the record almost to be something it wasn't when it came out. And I mean that for the most positive, you know, I mean that for the most positive, you know, but it changed into something else completely. And it kind of just grew. And pretty much we are a band that is touring next to that record and watching it do its thing, you know, and we're playing the same songs. Like you're saying, like, I mean, we played the Taste of Ink at Boxful. We played pretty much every show forever. You know, I don't think we've ever not played either of those two. I take that back. There was one tour that we did, the first and second record tour. I'm not sure if you ever saw any of those. And so that's the only time that we didn't play Taste of Ink and Boxful was when we were playing the In Love and Death shows, you know. So that's a pretty big deal. Actually, we might have even played one of those in the encore. So that might not be true either. But point being, those songs live have changed for us too. You know, obviously we at least as far as Dan, well, Dan wasn't in the band then, but Dan has jazzed up the parts to make it feel more like how he felt like playing it. And I have jazzed up the bass lines to just more to have fun. So now when we're playing live, nothing's exact as the record, obviously. You know, we try to just jam through it live, you know, because once you know the notes, you know the language, it's easy to kind of alter the words, you know what I'm saying? And so that was a weird way to put that whole thing, but yeah, I think you understood what I mean, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, yeah. So we're going out there and then we're recreating these songs based off of who we are now, somewhat, you know, which is a lot of fun for me because it helps put some air back into it. You know what I mean? And then, like I was saying, then you have the fans coming out and they're throwing up their emotion into it. And so then it's like a complete new song that is the same song. You know, it's not like we're going that far drastically, but yeah.
I always thought it was funny because, like, you know, like you said, you guys are, I think comes that point when in a band's career where sometimes you'll not necessarily, here's a song, start, stop, banter, next song, stop, start. You know, you learn how to kind of do like intros and things like that and kind of like work on something so it feels like a full show from start to finish. But what always is interesting to me is when you go see something, because I mean, obviously the melody or the root notes and stuff are always going to be the same, but it is astounding when I'm like, oh, this is this. Like when I kind of realized like Bert might be talking or who whatever band is, here's like whatever's playing in the background. I'm like, oh, this is this song.
Mhm.
And it doesn't register with probably 99% of the audience until literally the song starts. And you're like,
Totally,
how did
yeah.
none of you realize that was what, what song was coming next?
Because we know that, like, the key, you can kind of tinker around on it, and kind of, as long as everyone knows what we're going to go into, we can kind of float on the intro of the song,
Yep.
or like a chorus or whatever. It just doesn't matter. Yeah, that's pretty funny. It is weird too when you listen to music enough and you listen to songs enough. And I mean, everybody has this. I'm 99% sure. Maybe not everyone, obviously, but most people have this, to where you could play 0.1 second of a song. You know what I mean? You could just go bam, and everybody like, oh, I know that song. That's this song. That's crazy. That's crazy, man.
I have actually learned, and there's a show about that now. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not new, but they brought back Name That Tune.
Oh.
And, but it's not the way it used to be. Was literally you would hear the song, like they would play the song somehow, they get clearance from someone's catalog or probably a label's catalog or whatever that maybe was ran by the TV company. But now it's on or it used to be on Fox, and it's like, I can't think of the dude's name. He's the Pizza Hut spokesperson that was in Hot Tub Time Machine. Craig Robinson. But he'll be like, oh, and he'll like, or no, I'm sorry, Jesus Christ, wrong person entirely. It's Randy Jackson. That's what I'm thinking. Randy.
Oh,
Jackson.
love him. Yeah.
But he'll like play it on piano or something like, oh, I can name that note and like that song in one note or two notes or whatever.
Yeah.
And it is interesting because I know I have a really good memory for like a melody or a note or whatever. I'm like, oh, that's this, which actually gets me in, like, listening to music kind of sucks because like, my wife, again, with some of the stuff she likes that I can't stand, loves like, top 40 radio stuff. And there was something a while back, Dua Lipa, and I was like, that's In Excess. They're borrowing the melody to Need You Tonight or something like that. And I was like, it's the same guitar line and all that kind of stuff. She's like, sure. But it's funny to me that like, yeah, but I guess that was actually the crux of her album Future Nostalgic, was that she was taking old music and kind of doing new stuff to it. So cool concept, but I ruin a lot of music for myself where I'm like a while back, I think it was some female pop singer, and I was like, you know your music when you know that the vocal melody for the hook of this song is like, it's a fastball song, but it was the third single they put out that flopped. Oh, you know music, and music is weird when what was considered a commercial flop can then become a successful chorus for another song 20 some odd years later. But it's weird that's how it can work sometimes, where it's like, no, it was a good melody back then, just I guess people didn't like it because it wasn't whatever.
It's funny, there's a Ghostface Killer record called Pretty Tony. I think that's what it's called. Have you heard that? It's him just rapping over old R&B stuff. Yep. It's like full R&B songs, some of them. And I think he got in trouble for it. I'm pretty sure. But the record's really good.
I was gonna say those are some of the best records. Like when Danger Mouse put out the Gray album between the Beatles and Jay-Z's Black album.
That was cool. I remember that.
That was a great one. Same we did with Linkin Park and Jay-Z. I guess he's the
only one really. That's right. I remember that too. Things. There's a Radiohead one, right? Radiohead and Pink Floyd.
Something. Yeah, I think it was Dark Side of the Computer or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. That was great.
Have you guys? I mean, I know you guys have done some remixes and stuff like that, but like, is that actually? Let me go a different route with that. Knowing that you're into hip hop and stuff like that, I'm surprised you don't get, or maybe you have, and I just don't know. Do you get asked to do studio work for rap stuff at all? To come lay down like a?
Yes and no, not really. I live too far away, obviously, and there's always a good bass player somewhere around, so it's not as, no one's, unless they wanted to use Jeff from The Used, but there's so many good bass players. There's so many people that can just jam, and so I don't think my name's really put out on that world, unfortunately, because it'd be a lot of fun. But we did, our old guitar player, so this is back during, I think in Love and Death. No, it wasn't. It was Lies for Liars. It was during Lies for Liars. Lil Jon wanted our guitar player to come play on some of his stuff. So me and our video guy at the time, who is also, he's the guy on the cover of Lies for Liars. That's actually a real person that's inside of a mask on that cover.
Okay.
And so that dude, he did a bunch of cool shit with us. He made some videos for us too. That dude really helped us a lot. CW is his name, by the way, but CW, me, him, the guitar player, and all of us went to this house that we're supposed to go to, and he was going to record stuff. We get to the house, and I think who the fuck answers the door? Somebody answers the door. I want to say it's what the hell's his name? I'm going to ruin his name if I can't remember. Like, it's on the tip of my tongue right now. I don't want to say Big Rick. That sounds stupid.
Rick Ross?
It was Rick Ross. Rick Ross answered the door. Yeah, and we're like,
Rick.
Yeah, I know.
That's
like,
his new name now. Big Rick. Big Rick.
Big Rick's cool. I'm really bad with names, but Rick Ross answered the door, and we were all like, what's going on? Like, this is fucking awesome. And so we go inside, and he takes us down to this room, and just Lil Jon's in this like soundproof room, just jamming. Just has like music being played, and he has Quinn go sit down on the couch and gives him guitar, and he just says, just jam some shit. I'm just going to record some things and just take some bits and pieces from you. And then he was like, you guys can go hang out in that other room. There's some beers in the fridge. Me and my friend ended up taking all of the beers he had. We drank everything out of his house. I guess it was pretty bad because after they were jamming for like a couple hours, they came out and he was like, damn, you guys cleared everything out. Like, oh, sorry, dude. And because I guess there was a lot of people there, but nobody was drinking. They were just kind of hanging out. And so we felt awkward. So we're just like, well, we're just going to drink everything he has. But that's the closest, I guess, I've got to jamming with anyone, just by drinking all their beer. So it's not a very good chase, or what do you call it?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of the fun stories of like and I'm speaking like fifth hand of like, through, listening to podcasts, watching, a lot of the things that have come out over the years with someone. These are the kind of stories to me that I'm just like, those are the ones that I think are more interesting, because it's like kind of one of those of like, how the fuck did I even get here? And ones that I think are more interesting because that's how a lot of, like, as you were talking about that, I was reminded of going to this place in Atlanta called the Red Phone Booth. And I guess they have them around the country, but it's basically like a traditional speakeasy type thing. Like you have you get a code that day, and before COVID, we went during COVID, so they pretty much just kind of let people in. But you go to their website or whatever, you find the code, and then that's the code for the day to get in. So it changes, and it's kind of like a cigar bar cocktail place. And so we went, definitely weren't dressed accordingly because we didn't know there was a dress code. And they let us in. They were super nice. And then I made a comment about, like, I was like, I think that's DJ Khaled. And then everyone's like, that's not fucking DJ Khaled. So they move us because the people that were supposed to have the seats we had finally showed up. So they put us in this back room by the cigar humidor and all that stuff. And then probably 10 minutes after we were sitting down, Ludacris literally sits next to us, like basically across from us. And I'll never forget it because it was the day Chadwick Boseman died, and I got a text from someone that was like, "Hey, Chadwick died," and I was like, "Oh fuck!" As we're watching like an Avengers movie above us, and so I said that to my friends because everyone's like, "What happened?" And I was like, "Oh, fucking Chadwick died," and then I saw Luda like at his phone. But it was funny because when they all were coming back from the bathroom or grabbing drinks, I was like, "Hey, that's Luda. Don't look at him." Like, yes, that's who it is. Like, just real quickly to like, so that way they weren't like "Hey, I think that's." It's like, no, it is. Just leave him alone.
Just keep going.
And
rad too. But
it was funny because then everyone all of a sudden was like, maybe that was DJ Khaled up front, and I'm like, y'all thought I was bullshitting initially, but
that's cool, man. That's pretty rad.
But again, it's just kind of being in unique situations and kind of having an interesting story to tell, just because you're there and kind of along for a journey and a fun experience, not being afraid of a new experience, I guess, even.
Totally, which is really important, obviously, not being afraid of whatever gets thrown in your life randomly.
How has, because I kind of love talking about this now that I've traveled in the States, at least a little bit more. obviously living abroad and so forth, I feel like, and just traveling gives you such a unique experience to take in different cultures, different, everything. I remember something that sticks out in my mind that made me think of this a while back was, and I don't know what you were making, but there was the photo of Instagram. It was like over your back, I think. And you're making what looks like a wheat basket or a grass basket or something. I guess, what was that? Because I don't know what it was.
So that's funny. I have some pretty crazy pictures on my Instagram that I might have taken down by now. That one isn't as crazy as it looks. That was where I live in Hawaii. That was my wife was just showing me how to make weave coconut fronds, like the coconut leaves of the tree. They start splitting apart because of the wind sometimes. And so then we just cut the trees down and cut each part off, Actually, I think they split out over time for another reason, but we'd cut each piece off and flatten them out and just kind of weave with them because they're really strong.
Yeah.
And so we were just making stuff, just kind of fucking around. But sorry, can you hear my dummy big dog barking?
That's okay. What dogs do. They'll be quiet when you don't need them to be. And then when you want to do something that is, you need to be quiet, they'll be loud. Actually, my old dog actually used to be on almost every episode in the background barking at something. And it's one of those that after I had to put her down literally on New Year's Day 2020, that I kind of will go back and listen and it's like, it used to drive me nuts. Now I'm kind of like,
I get it.
You're there. Piece of you is still there.
Sounds. I get it. It's all part of it.
Yeah. At least now I can joke that she knew that the COVID and all that was coming and she got out while it was still good. So I can still joke about it now. Wasn't funny then.
I get it. I totally get it. Man, dogs.
That's why, I think you're
the same.
I was gonna say, I think your streams, I think you'll enjoy the streams at some point whenever Lincoln and any of them are gone. I think eventually you'll be glad that you had them in the streams and were a featured part of them because you'll be able to have all those hours of just them
reconnecting. Gotta admit, for sure. I mean, Link's 13 now, and all he does is sleep. That's it. He sleeps, asks for food, and then wants to go back to bed. That's his day.
That's good
Maybe
life.
sit in the sun. Yeah, it's not so bad.
He's earned it.
You brought up traveling earlier, and nothing has changed my life more. And I'm not saying this very lightly, obviously, but nothing has changed my life more than being able to actually travel and go to these spots that I could never go to before. Obviously, I grew up pretty poor, but being able to actually go to places that I dreamed of as a kid, fucking phenomenal. I had such a connection. It's funny because that other interview that I did, they were asking me about the beginning of recording, and I had two obsessions when I was really young, and it was at least as far as countries go. I was obsessed with Japan, obviously. That's deep, that one, and England. I always wanted to go to England because I grew up with a lot of English comedy TV shows when I was really young. So lots of different English shows growing up. And so I've had that kind of background of Japan and England put together. And then when I finally got to go to these countries, I was like, oh my fucking God, this is the coolest shit ever, seeing it in person and being a part of it. And it's definitely been there, man. I don't remember the point. There's a point to that, but I kind of lost my train getting so excited about it.
Well, I was going to say, my point was going to be more of, I can't help but feel that it has informed so much of the things I give a fuck about now. I didn't used to care about politics, and I don't really care in the sense of I'm staunchly this, I feel this way. I mean, I think I'm very much in the middle, and I just want people to exist and be happy and just be cool with one another. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those that sometimes when I hear people say something, I'm like, you've never left this fucking city. How do you think you understand what you're saying or the things that you want to take away or give to people who you've never met? You don't know what those situations are like.
Totally.
So how can you say so matter-of-factly, this is how everyone should live when you've never left here?
Totally.
And it's things like that.
It's so important for that alone. If America got out of the country, I say America as being general, how many Americans don't own passports in America? It's like super majority don't own passports, you know? And it's like, just if all of the people could just travel and go to different countries and see how other people act and how other people are living, and there wouldn't be this, I mean, I don't want to say that I'm going to solve world peace because I'm not that person, but I'd love to.
I love that you just have those in your pocket, by the way.
Yeah, I was doing some training earlier because he's
okay.
still a baby, you know, and we're having a lot of fun. We really were. And now he's getting bored. But
didn't mean to sidetrack you there.
No, you're not. You're not. Just being able to travel, being able to these people that are so like racist or so like stuck in their beliefs of this is how you have to live and can't get out of trying new foods or trying new things, but taking that same person, getting that passport, you know what I mean? Dropping them off in some country that doesn't have, that you can't speak English to get through, you know what I mean? And been like, you guys figure it out, you know, go for it. Figure it out. You have, here's, you know, you have to eat, you have to figure out how to eat. You have to figure out where to order, you know what I mean? And then having them just try different places out. And then that maybe they wouldn't be so fucking arrogant when, you know, the people are like, oh, speak English, you're in America. It's like, you don't fucking know the background. You know, you don't know what it took for them to get here. You don't know how hard it is to learn another language, you know?
I think that's been one of my biggest gripes in the last, I would say really since the pandemic, because I've noticed it more personally, was the sense of entitlement and the sense of arrogance from a lot of people. And I don't want to necessarily just go, it's the younger generation, because I feel like it's everybody of all ages and so forth. But it's more, I guess, the stubbornness of just not wanting to think any other way than your own. And I think that's, and again, maybe it's because of going to therapy. Like, you know, I made the comment to someone who had asked about, you know, how therapy was going when I started it. And I was like, you know, I'm pretty good at picking up on things pretty quickly. And I go, my therapist gave me homework. And it was like, because the thing I had a problem with was overthinking to death. Solving all the what ifs that will never happen. And she gave me a worksheet basically, or actually it was just an email with a sheet on it, but it was one cog with like 6 or 7 other ones. And the exercise was, what is the big cog? What is the problem? And then it was, you know, what are the other problems that you're feeling? And I didn't even do the exercise. I looked at it and I go, oh, I fucking get this. I go, I'm not addressing the big problem, but I've created all these things that keep spinning and making everything move and be worse because I've added all these other pieces to it that have nothing to do with it. And once I eliminate those, then I can focus on what the actual problem is and kind of get through it. And I feel like it's even in that of accepting that you don't know everything, like I said, kind of being more present, but also that a slight shift in perspective can open up so many new things for you. And, you know, it's like I had told someone going through therapy was almost like seeing in 2D my whole life. And then someone gave me glasses or something and I can see in 3D. And you're like, holy shit, does anyone else know about this? Like, holy fuck, this is totally different.
Wow.
And
that's really interesting.
When you have those experiences or when you have enough people tell you these kind of things, I don't understand why, you know, and I say this all the time, we have a way to connect with people all over the world and get all kinds of information. And you have to do your due diligence and fact check and make sure what you're reading is accurate.
100%. Yeah.
But the fact that people don't even do that, like I get shit on a lot because my wife will be like, you're always on your phone. I was like, oh, sorry. I was looking to see when bees sleep because we have bumblebees at the end of our driveway. And I was trying to figure out when I could potentially try to get rid of them. And then she was like, oh, well, do bees sleep? I go, no, they go into a less dormant state around this time and this time. And then it was just like, but like, that's how I work. Like, I'll have a question. I have something that I can ask it. So I will.
Totally. What's difficult now, though, is that there's so much garbage that certain things are easy to fact check, like bees. But then if you get into political things, people just straight up lie now. Yeah. You know, they're just,
well, there's no accountability.
That too, which is hopefully that's trying to change, but it doesn't look like it is, you know, depending on which side you're on. Obviously, I don't think you're on one side, but it's very, you know, hopefully accountability from what's going on will actually exist now, or America's going to be in big fucking trouble, which is another scary good thing to think about.
I think that's the thing that's hard to deal with. Like, you know, I was kind of talking about this thing of like, you know, everyone commenting first on stuff.
And I'm like, everyone wants to be the first or the best, but mainly I'll focus on the first. Like you see all these comments on things, it's like first, but you'll see like 17 of them because not everyone can see everything as it's actually happening.
Yeah.
So in the time that it took you to write first, 30 other people are doing the same. And then by the time you hit post, like you get a bunch of those. But it's like the thing that I keep going back to, and at least, I'll use Instagram as the main example because it gets the point across a little quicker. Instagram is supposed to be a visual medium followed by typically a caption of some sort to go with the visual. There's no fucking way in a matter of 30 seconds of you writing first, you didn't take in the image, you didn't take in the caption. So what value are you adding to the experience?
Yeah.
Just to write first.
Totally.
And I feel like there's so much of that entitlement, I guess, or that weirdness of
like, look at
people
me
wanting to be first. Yeah, look at me.
Yeah.
And you're like, but you didn't even take in whatever it is. You couldn't have appreciated the thing fully to make an informed decision. Like I had the same thing a couple of weeks ago. Kendrick Lamar dropped his new record. As a really big Kendrick fan, I'm still listening to Pimp a Butterfly and I'm still finding things in that. And that record's like 10 years old. I don't have nearly the same relationship as I do with Damn because I haven't had it that long. But to see within 6 hours of that new record coming out, people writing like think pieces on it, I'm like, you've had it for 6 fucking hours. How could you? And it took the dude 5 fucking years to make this. How could you have given it the just due to write this long op-ed piece about it? There's no fucking way.
Yeah, you need to get it
like
super
we're in a culture
early.
of that.
Yeah, that's true, man. That's pretty crazy. Funny enough, back to your other story, not to jump subjects, but
No, you're good.
what you're telling about the hamster and the wheel, and then everything you were saying there, I had a DMT trip that was exactly the whole story you were telling me. It was tripping me out so bad there. The hamster, the wheel, realizing it was a cog.
Oh, no, it wasn't a hamster and a wheel. It just literally was a cog. It was a bunch of cogs. And the point of the
mine was a hamster that was a cog, that was part of a cog that was connected to other things. It was moving things together. It was pretty much the story you told exact. I was living at some point in time.
I have learned quite a bit about myself and life by taking some psychedelics and enjoying what the world will reveal to me in that. I haven't, it's funny talking to Chris from Poison the Well. That was sort of like half of the crux of the conversation was just being open to experiences and at times, sometimes utilizing some of these things as a vehicle or a conduit to tap into these things that maybe we're afraid of to just go into on our own for whatever reason. And it's definitely become something where very recently I've been like, I kind of want to get some mushrooms again, or maybe even some acid, and just kind of see with having therapy and with having like my cards read and stuff recently, seeing with some new information what I can kind of work through and reveal about myself.
I get it. Mushrooms are great, man.
100%.
Not from a drug point, not from a drug standpoint, but from I guess you want to say spiritual standpoint. Mushrooms are pretty great.
Yeah,
you can really learn a lot about yourself, and it is important to be afraid of it. It is important to be nervous. I think jumping into something, you kind of don't know where you're going. You don't know what's going to happen, so you kind of have to be very aware. To me, it's a lot about set and setting. My wife's calling me. Speaking about set and setting.
Would you like me to mute your mic and take that call?
No, I'll call her back in a sec.
Okay.
Yeah, set and setting. Couldn't lose my train of thought. I did ayahuasca when I was in Panama.
How was that?
And
that intrigues the shit out of me, but I don't know.
I think DMT was a little they're both so the same and they're both so not the same,
Having only done one of the two, I sort of can at least understand from the DMT perspective of what it was like and what it does.
Ayahuasca lasts a lot longer, but it's also more intense. I don't know. I thought it was way more intense, the ayahuasca thing,
That's what I've heard.
I met some kind of creature thing. It's hard to say, it's like an experience is an experience for you alone, right?
Yes.
And me putting it into words doesn't do it justice, But there's not just
there's not just, you know, there's like the visual sense of seeing something, you know, and then there's the audible sense of actually hearing something. And then we have that other sense if like you're standing behind me and you're staring at me and I can feel that you're staring at me, you know, like what sense is that, you know? And I'm sure there's other senses that are out there too that we're not quite in tune with that do exist, obviously, or maybe not obviously to everyone. But so I had some of those senses, a lot of those senses existing that I was kind of trying to comprehend at the time, you know? I'm seeing stuff like, you know, a creature that's part plant and animal at the same time, you know, is pretty weird, obviously, you know, but seeing it breathe and seeing like almost stuff I can consider organs and understanding what it's telling me without having words exist, you know, almost trying to communicate outside of language, which is an interesting thing, which you do on a sense of traveling and speaking with people who don't speak the same language as you. You're trying to figure out how to talk. But imagine trying to figure out how to talk where there's other senses that are involved you still don't understand, you know? Or even so, that feeling I was talking about being stared at and knowing that feeling and knowing what that feels like. But if you're doing like something like ayahuasca and you encounter something that you're getting that feeling from, it's pretty insane, right? Because that seems that whatever that feeling is a reaction of something, right? It seems weird for, you know, you can, maybe it doesn't. I don't know enough about science to know, obviously, you know, there's that battle, you know, science and religion. And I think religion is garbage. We're not going to go into that. But also there's the spiritual side, which is a different side. So we can just take the religion part out and just put spiritual there instead. So when you have spiritual and science, I believe in science. I fully believe. And you don't have to believe in science because there's proof behind it. It's not a belief, you know, and a belief is almost a religious word, you know. So you don't have that. You don't need that. But then there's some stuff that science can't explain, that's spiritual stuff that kind of leads the way in some of that stuff, you know, and it obviously exists or it's there. There's a vibe or you can feel it, you know, who knows? I can't really fully explain it. So these two things coexist, I believe, right? And I'm using belief again. How do you navigate between those two? Understanding that science doesn't know everything yet, right? But hopefully science will know everything. You know, hopefully science will keep going because science is going to be a never-ending journey to understand. That's what science is, right? Right. But you also can't take science as a religion, right? You can't think science as definite answer as this is this and that's it, right? You can for some things, obviously, when there's enough background check and there's enough testing and there's enough people over the years, you finding it out, but things can change. They can find out new things. Like when you go through COVID, right? In the beginning of COVID, don't wear masks. It's not going to help. Then it's like, oh, you fucking better wear a mask. You have to wear a mask. It's airborne. So make sure that you have better masks, you know, and people got confused and saying, oh, they don't know what they're fucking talking about, you know, but science was evolving after learning about stuff, you know? So in the beginning, it wasn't fully there yet. It was taking the steps and taking the taking the steps. I want to say seconds, but that doesn't make sense, you know? And so I feel like there's going to be a bridge at some point where there's that spiritual side is going to be kind of overlapping, maybe not, you know? It depends, I guess, if you believe in like, if psychic abilities exist, you know, which is a whole nother story, obviously. Or if do you believe in Bigfoot, you know, or do you believe in UFOs? I mean,
I don't think there's whether you believe. I mean, now the government has fully proven.
Yeah, the UFO one is obvious, right? It's like, and the alien one is even obvious too. It's like, okay, you can only, once there's enough evidence about something, you know, maybe if you don't have the defined answer, there's just enough evidence to say that, yeah, it's fucking so highly likely, likely. And that's being scientific instead of saying, yes, there is. It's just like, you know.
I think for me, it's interesting because I'm like, it's always funny when people like I said, when I did that episode with Chris, there were some friends that were like, I didn't know you've done all those like drugs and shit. And I was like, well, I don't really want to advocate doing them, but I also am curious. And I think there's a healthy curiosity. And most of the stuff that I've done has been, you know, you're saying a time and place, you know, a setting. most everything has been at a point, interestingly enough, when I look back, where I was kind of at a crossroads with a lot of things, and I guess I didn't want to deal with them, or I didn't know how to go about it. And every time in those situations of doing something, you know, it's revealed something to me. Like, you know, one of the last times I did like DMT, I was in a bad relationship, and I was getting a back rub from my roommate, who was getting a back rub from her, like my other roommate who she was dating. And I remember just being like, I'm getting a pity back rub. My fucking girlfriend lives like 10 minutes away from me. She won't even fucking see me. My now wife drove 20 minutes across town on a Thursday to come hang out with me. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I would rather not be in this shit relationship where I have none of the rewards, quote unquote, and see what there is with this person who clearly makes me feel wanted and makes me feel like I'm somebody. And
Totally.
that I'm seen. And I was like, so why not pursue that? Worst case, I'm pretty much right where I am right now. And when I kind of was like, came to like, you know, everything had worn off, I was like, yeah, I'm done with this relationship and I'm going to see where this one goes. And here I am. And
Totally.
I have too many examples like that in my life, like where I've done these things where it's like life kind of then, you know, revealed itself and I chose a different path than the one I was on. And I've been rewarded almost every time. But it's almost because I was willing to look inward and go on the journey of self-reflection and hopefully enlightenment to a degree, and then, you know, see where it goes from there until the next thing.
I like
but
that.
I feel like
That
a lot
makes
of people,
sense.
I think people are too afraid to get real with themselves because they're fake to everyone else too. So why would you be real with yourself?
No, you're so right, man. That's another problem. I mean, being real with yourself is it's tough because you have stuff. I mean, you know, I'm not, you know, things change and move and evolve as they are, you know, and I'm not the one that's trying to say, I know better and I know how things should be. You know, I don't know better. I don't know how things should be. I've made mistakes in my life. I've fucked up, you know, but when it comes to putting stuff, you know, how the internet is now and social media and putting yourself out there as not who you are, but who you want to be portrayed as.
An avatar.
Right. Yeah. You kind of get lost a little bit in that. I think, you know, it's like, you're not actually true to yourself. You're true to what you think people would think they want you to be, which is really deep when you get into that whole thing you're talking about now, you know, it's really deep trying to get out of that in that sense. Like, when do you become that person that you're pretending to be, you know?
Well, I mean, in a day and age of fake it till you make it, there's that side of it. But I mean, some of that
fake it till you make it, some of that I can almost understand in a different context, you 100%. Know? And I mean that as far as like, I'm confident, you know?
Yeah, I was going to say for you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That worked for me in some senses, you know? I could get up and play shows now because it's like, I got to do it. You know, I couldn't go up without a bass though. If I went up on a show and played a show without a bass, oh my God, I'd piss myself.
Well, it's, you know, as you were saying, time and setting and place and all that stuff, it reminded me of another trip I had where my friends wanted to take our dogs. And I was like, I don't want to be responsible right now. So I just went on the walk, but they had two smaller dogs. So every 15 minutes they'd have to pick them up or we'd have to stop. And I remember we were on this trail and this old couple had walked by us and then a runner had come from behind us and ran past us. And I just kind of started laughing and they were like, what's so funny? And I go, in the most literal of senses, the old people were in our future, traversed into our present, went into our past. Someone literally ran from our past into our present, into the future. I go, and there's like throw into the fact that that's an old couple and then a younger person, and we're somewhere literally right in the middle. I was like, time exists, like literally in all three of those senses. Like those all exist. They are all happening right now. I go, it's a very Donnie Darko wormhole thingy that, like, you know, you see, and I go, I've never thought of life like that. And then they were just kind of like, you're high as fuck. I was like, I am, but like, honestly, that's a real thing. We exist in all three of these things. We exist in all these planes. We are in a future. We are working toward a future. We're existing, moving toward the future. We have a past and we exist in the present. but where you literally exist or what you think of could be in any one of those things. And, you know, that's something I talk about quite a bit that I've applied to a different facet and thought is, you know, you as creatives, especially musicians, you are doing that every day. Like, you were just talking to AP about a record from 20 years ago. There's probably stuff you're writing now and the things that are happening to you now that are going to inform the next record that you write. And then when that comes out, you're going to have to go back into the past and relive that as you talk about it, and then play those old songs in your present and a future time too, when you look at your tour dates coming up. And it's like, you exist in all three of those planes as a touring musician almost all the time.
That's funny, because if you ever get into like thought about dimensions and stuff like that, that's like another trip, like similar thing, you know, existing in a dimension and trying to see a higher dimension doesn't work, you know, but actually it's like, how do you explain that? Like, I mean, God, I've watched so many things on this. Like, you know, you have the one dimension, here it is, you know, if you exist on this one dimension, you can just walk back and forth, you know, and anything is as flat as it possible existence, you know, but I could see it, you know what I mean? Like, I can see it because I exist in the third dimension. You can't see me because you only exist on this flat line. You would have to see me coming in contact. But if it was 2-dimension, right, the same kind of thing, you can walk in your whole 2-dimension lifestyle. And same thing, I can see your whole life from above it because I'm in the third dimension, you know what I mean? And if I was to put my hand through your dimension as you're in that dimension, you would just see the sections of my hand coming into existence, you know, but you didn't have any context where those sections come from. You know what I mean? So it'd be this fucking crazy trip of all of a sudden bone, meat, and blood just all in little cutout sections appearing, you know? But then you get to, you know, our dimension, you can see everything. And then you get to the fourth dimension, which, I mean, I don't know. Some people consider that time and some people consider it something else, you know, but if it's time, it would make sense. I don't think it's time though, but if it was time, it would make sense because since we live in that dimension, we don't see time the same way. We see bits and pieces of time. You know what I mean? We can reflect on time as it was, and we could guess on what time would be, but we're living in this moment of time. So, you know what I mean? And time isn't equal, right? So if you were living in the dimension of that, would you be able to just see all of time as it existed as a point? At one point, you could see the entire thing. And we would see us in there just living it on and couldn't see in front of us, you know, but you could clearly see what's going to happen in front of you, you know, if you're in that other dimension. Shit's a trip, man.
It's it is, and it isn't, and it's funny because like I think one of the things, and this is such a weird, and I don't know if it's the same for you because everything's different per each individual. I think one of the things that, like, in all of my experiences, the one thing I always walk away from is that I just need to be more me, and I need to stop being worried about how people are going to react to something to a degree. Like, I remember taking acid, and I saw a friend of mine was pissed about something, and I was told that I had to break the news that we were taking her ex-boyfriend with us to Atlanta for a trip because we had already been on a trip with her, and she was not great to be with at the time. And so I was like, well, she's already mad about this. You can't be more mad, was my thought process. So then when she was revealing about all this stuff, I was like, hey, by the way. And then she was like, what the fuck? Now, the important part is I'm terrible with dates. And so her birthday was on one of the holidays or around one of the holidays. And I said we were going on another one. It was like Memorial Day and Labor Day. I always flip them around. And so she was like, you guys are cool. So you're just going to go to Atlanta with my ex around my birthday. That's fucking great. And then I was like, showed my wife the text after, or the phone call and the text after the fact. And then she was like, you know, you told this person like the wrong information. And I was like, oh, did I? No, whatever. I was just more concerned with like, I'll let her know now because she's mad and she can't get more mad. So like, that was my thought process. And that's kind of how I should live life, is that I should just not be afraid of making people upset because they can only get so upset.
You know, I wonder if they would get upset less if they let go of their, ego about the situation, you know. And it's not easy. I don't want to say that like that's some easy thing, you know. I had to battle. I don't mean ego as being cocky either, you know. I don't mean that. Yeah. Total different idea. But I had to battle with that with some things growing up too. Like in the beginning, some of these.
When you say beginning of what?
Oh, the beginning of the used. Sorry,
Okay,
I could say the
okay.
beginning of a lot of things, but I'm just going back to the beginning of the used.
Okay.
I was so scared to have our records altered, you know, because when you go to a producer, they're trying to produce the best music out of you, right? And so when we first went to Feldman, and we had these
so
demos, he is sometimes with something. He isn't. You know what? I've and this is a long story, and it kind of connects to this. I have so much fucking respect for Feldman. In the beginning, I used to butt heads with them a lot. You know, maybe not verbally as much because I was that shy kid, but I just didn't like the idea of us coming together with something as a band and then taking it to someone else for them to give their 2 cents into it and try to change or alter it to be what they consider better. You know what I mean? Mm. That's what a producer is, right? They're trying to help you be the best that you can be ultimately, right? At least that's what producers were. And so I've learned over the years that that's just my ego talking, you know, like we can come up, like as a band, we could jam, we could do whatever the fuck we want. We can come up with ideas, constant ideas. If something's not good, toss it, come up with something better, you know? But that is so hard to get past almost in the beginning when you fall in love with bits and pieces. You know, even like bass, like we'll just go to a bass line that I'm really excited about. Maybe it won't make the record. You know, maybe it's cutting into the vocals too much. Maybe it doesn't sound good. And I'm the only one that can't hear it because I'm so blinded by my ego of thinking it sounds good. You know what I'm saying? And so over the years, I've really learned how to not hold on to things so tightly. You know, like before Heartwork, right before Heartwork, we wrote and recorded almost like 20 jams at our guitar player's house, you know, 20 songs. Not one of those went for Heartwork. We just ditched them all, you know, and there was some cool shit. There was some really cool shit. We put a lot of time into it, you know. None of it just seemed to vibe out. It just wasn't right. So instead of being obsessed with those songs and ideas, we just kind of were like, we'll try something else, you know. But that takes a lot of like, what am I trying to say? You know, just being able to let go of something that you work on. It doesn't mean it was the best. It just means that maybe your head's caught in it too much, you know? And so that's the good part of having a producer who knows what he's talking about come in, because they can sit there and say, this idea is cool, but this chorus is crap.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, if you listen to our first demo, that happened a couple times. Like the Taste of Ink chorus is completely different, you know, and I still like the old chorus, but I 1000% get why the new chorus is way better. And John came up and said, yeah, this is too, it's too minor. I mean, there's this huge build, the verses are building, and then it gets to this minor that's such a lag in the choruses, and it's so boring because it lags, you know? And at the time, obviously, I'm like, no, I love it. Everything's perfect, you know?
Demoitis.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a lot to work on, really, with like personal work to get into that shit. Just being able to let go and being part of the whole. Because, you know, I mean, being a musician in a band, you're part of the whole. You're not the whole. You're part of the whole. You know, and your part and the ideas that you come out with all need to be flexible at all times, you know, because you never know. Maybe a bass line will become a guitar line and the bass should be different, you know, or maybe the bass line has a cool rhythm. I'm only coming from bass world, you know, I could even take like maybe the guitar line should be a bass line, you know. You just never know.
I think that just, I mean, A, comes with more experience and like we've been saying lately, just different perspective. And I think the older you get, you realize you don't have to like be married to something for forever. Like you can sit with something. I think that's been one of my hardest things as I've gotten older is the impulse to do something, because, you know, maybe it's the collectors in us to a degree that maybe informs this mentality. But like, I know for me, sometimes I'm like, I got to get this thing, or I got to do this now, because like, at least we'll say with records, if I don't get it now, it's gone. and I won't be able to get that thing. And then there's
Yeah.
like the FOMO or whatever of and the overthinking of things. So I could kind of totally see that being something that you learn to let go of because you have more experiences that you've accumulated that allow you to then go, okay, so I really do love this part, and I really love this song, and I really, love the way it exists. But look at all these other examples of my career or other bands or whatever that have, changed things for the better, and it worked out better. I don't have to be married to this one idea. And what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I try this other thing and it doesn't work. Well, then we go back to what I already had.
Totally. You shouldn't be ever stuck. Demoitis is the best term ever, though, by the way. But
Yeah.
that sums it up in one, right there.
Yeah.
Falling too in love with something before you understand it.
Well, I think the hard part about demoitis, because like as someone who gets a lot of music and has a lot of friends who like send me a song like, hey, this I just wrote this. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And then you hear, gets fleshed out, with other people or pre-pro, and then, the first mix, the second mix, the final mix, like to see how a song where it starts to where it finishes, I can count on so like, Him is a great example, like one of my favorite bands. That band has so many different versions of the same fucking song where like, oh, the verse is a little bit longer, or the guitars were louder, or this verse is like lyrically, the verse is completely different, or the chorus was the pre-chorus initially, or just things like that. Like when you can see how many different iterations of the same thing can exist, and they're all great. But when you hear like what it went into to get the final thing that you love so much, you're like, man, it's amazing how many different directions this could have gone. And
Totally.
Even something as simple as a producer, or, hey, we ran this cab today, or I used this guitar, or whatever, like can change. Like you were saying with the Taste of Ink, something I never thought of, and someone, that I used to live with was like, oh, you're doing a very, like, you're writing a minor in a minor key, most of it. You need something to pay that off, or you need to do something because like it's got to change. And I'm not musically inclined like that. I just kind of write based on feel. And
Totally.
So it was one of those things, like to see someone be so, kind of calculated and kind of like cold, take the emotion out of it, was so weird to me and foreign, because I was like, you can't write music like that. Like you can't write and just be like, oh, you're writing in this key and it's all minor, so make it a major for this and da-da-da. It's like, it just sounds so formulaic. Like who the fuck writes like that? But it is one of those things that if the person knows what they're talking about, that's how you write a better song, because it's like you need that payoff, because most people's ears will pick up on that subconsciously and go, oh, I was expecting the big reward for this. And then you're like, oh. So
Totally.
somewhere
Yeah.
in that, the marriage exists between the two, where it's like you have to kind of be on feel and a little bit more formulaic in the approach.
That's why that outside opinion to me is so important. You get stuck jamming on something and putting something together so much that you lose track of maybe what was cool about it. Maybe it originally started out cool, but then sometimes you just get stuck in your own mind about something. Sometimes it still comes out good, don't get me wrong, but it is just nice to have that outside, like, no, you're doing it wrong, or you're doing great. Like even that outside encouragement, like the both parts together, somebody that's just brutally honest. Whoa, you could use that.
It was better than the other name that was thrown around when we were changing the names.
Oh,
Everyone
really?
wanted to, yeah, because I had a co-host. That's why I changed the name, because I was like, it feels
okay.
sort of disingenuous to have my name on something with somebody else.
Oh, I see. I get that.
And then it was, my last name is Beatty, so my co-host, I think at the time, was like, you should call it Clickbaity. And I was like, no one will ever come on that show ever.
That's funny.
But I was like, it is a
Better
good
than
name.
Master, but Master would be weird.
Yeah.
Actually, kind of your name wrong in the chat. I say Betty.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
but it's from. I get it from. It's not meant to be disrespectful. I'm getting it from Kung Pao. Do you remember Kung Pao?
100%. Enter the fist.
Yep. Betty was the bad guy's name.
Yep.
That's what. I
No,
got
it's
for
always
him.
funny because everyone, my frame of reference used to be Ned or Warren Beatty. And now there's no famous Beatty, because if I say that to half the people, they're like, who the fuck are those people?
Oh,
Because
okay, I get it. I understand
they're
that.
not old. And I think Warren Beatty's still alive, but I know Ned Beatty died 10 years ago.
Dude, wild. Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah. That's another thing that is very weird to me, is the thought of age, because I'm going to be 38 in a couple of months. I don't feel that age. I still feel like I'm maybe 16 or 17. in my
Yeah,
head.
I get it.
But it's weird that
too.
when I see other, because I work at a bar and I work door, so I see literally how old people are. And I think that's kind of been a mind fuck recently for me, is like, I'll kind of try to guess someone's age before I get their ID.
I'm
And a
sorry
lot
about
of times people will be like, oh, you got to card us. Like, I'm old as fuck. And then it'll be like a group of dudes that are working or getting out of work. I'll check their IDs and I'm like, well, I'm 5 years older than the oldest one of you. So what does that make me? But even to the point, like, there's been people where I'm like, oh, this dude's got to be like 48, 52, somewhere in there. And the guy's like 26. I'm like, bro, whatever you're doing in life just ain't it.
Stop it. Please stop. Yeah.
If it's your job that's making you look like this, like, please stop. Like, it is not
man.
worth it. But I can't say that to someone that I don't know.
I get it. I understand that. That's pretty wild, man.
Last, because I'll let you go so you can call your wife back. Last question I have for you, and I don't know if you've actually addressed this anywhere, and I just haven't seen it. Where did the fascination with matcha tea come from?
Oh man, not just matcha tea. I've been obsessed with teas my whole life. So
As I just finished mine, by the way.
yeah, I was on to black tea for a long time. I'd never gotten to herbal tea very much. I say herbal usually though, but I never gotten to that very much. Black teas, and then I kind of get into just plain green tea. And growing up, I would go to, so I mean, all the different food places I would go to growing up would have different, style. I mean, I went to a lot of Japanese restaurants, and that's when I kind of got into the just plain green tea and like the hot green tea you'd get sometimes. Growing up in Utah, there wasn't a lot, but then when I started traveling, I started branching out into other types of teas, like UK, you always get your tea in UK, which is fucking awesome. And then obviously Japan, you get all the different fucking awesome teas, like the genmaicha and the obviously the matcha, all the roasted brown. That's what genmaicha is. The roasted brown rice tea. I don't know if you ever had that. It has popcorn and roasted brown rice in it. It's pretty fucking awesome. Then I got really into like Argentinian, like South American yerba mate,
Okay.
And so I was drinking the shit out of yerba for a long ass time. And then I got back into green tea again. And that's when the matcha thing clicked. I've had matcha for fucking ever. I've had matcha in Japan at like awesome tea houses, like really cool shit. It just didn't click to me as much as just regular green tea at the time. Like I loved it. I really loved it. But I think it didn't click because I didn't actually own any matcha, at the time. And this is years ago. So I'm pretty much spreading out my entire life into like a very small verbal section. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, this is spread over fucking 10,000 years, however old I am. But the matcha thing was pretty much just an extension of green tea because I love green tea so much. And I love all the different types of teas. Even like the twig tea. Have you ever had, so I know a lot of different Japanese teas, of course, but have you ever had mugicha? Does that sound familiar?
In name, but not actually had it. No.
It's fucking so good. This is not green tea though. This is barley tea, I think is what it is.
Okay.
Is it roasted barley? Barley tea. Fuck, it is so good, man. This is not even a green tea or matcha subject, so this is kind of off, but it is a tea. If you get a chance to try that, I was obsessed. Maybe I don't know if everyone's gonna like this. It's just a tea flavor, so maybe you're not gonna be like,
what was it called
my
again?
whole life.
I'm gonna write this down real quick.
Mugicha, mugicha.
Okay.
It might be two different words, mugi and cha, because cha means tea.
Yeah. Good enough. I have it, so I can look for it.
Okay, yeah, it's really fucking good. Sometimes I'll drink that throughout the day instead of having like 10 matchas. But now I've been so stuck on the matcha tip. It's a lot easier for me to get matcha than mugicha, but I think I feel better too. I can't drink coffee because I get bad anxiety from coffee, which is weird, because I could drink caffeine for days, but when I start drinking coffee, I'm just anxious and grumpy and hangry and all the other fun stuff,
It's just been kind of funny because like I used to I kind of am getting more into like, it was funny as you were saying, kind of like the like going to the Chinese restaurant I go to, I started buying the tea that they would bring to the table because I was like, the shit's so good, and I drink like
Is it jasmine?
I think it's just like oolong, honestly. That's
Oh
what it
god, I
tastes
love
like.
oolong too.
So, but they just like they bring me a pot and it's free, and usually I'll drink
Yeah.
at least one of those during my like 20-minute meal. And then I was like, "Do you
Totally.
guys sell this?" And they're like, $5 for or $8 for like this container. And I was like, "Bet, get me one." But
yeah,
then
man,
it like,
oolong is great.
but then it's like turned into like watermelon strawberry was really good.
Hey, there you
go. And mint. Actually, that was the one that got me. Watermelon strawberry mint, super
Oh, that's
delicious.
cool.
Really good as like an iced tea, like an iced tea. But then it's like go into like the stores where they have like their specialty blends and stuff. And
Yeah,
you're
right
just
on,
like,
dude.
so it's been something I've been getting into a lot more, and actually even having a friend that was like, "What? How are you brewing it?" And I was like, "Oh, I have like a Keurig thing. I just put it in like the loose leaf into like the like reusable cup and do that." And they're like, "No. I'm gonna get you some bags, and you're
Good,
gonna like
good,
start
yeah.
doing this." And I was like, "All right." So
You know what you
Go
need to
ahead.
get is so with mate, yerba mate, right? What they use is it's called a bombilla. It's a
Okay.
straw that has a filter on it.
Okay, I think I've seen that.
And so I usually, if it's not matcha, because matcha is just a fine powder that disintegrates. But if it's loose leaf tea, most of the time I just use one of those because I drink all my teas with a straw. So if you don't treat the straw, you might not like that.
I had
But
it.
it's a metal straw, so it's a little warm, obviously. But it's a filter on the bottom of it, so you don't need a tea bag. You can just brew it
Let it
as
be
it is,
loose.
whatever temperature. Just have loose leaf in your cup, and then just use that straw. So you can even get more life out of the tea because you can add more water and add a little more tea to it if you want to keep going. But
Interesting.
yeah,
I did
check
not
those
know
out.
that was a thing.
Bombilla, Bombilla, I think. You can
See,
find
this-
those at any kind of Argentinian or South American market, like Brazilian market, for sure. Funny
See,
enough, in
and that's-
Hawaii, they sell that at a couple markets that I go to.
It was funny though, because like knowing that, like, because you have like the matcha cam, you have like all of that stuff, and at times I was
Obsession.
like, I still can't figure out, and it probably is because it's you have like the Elgato
Tons of
thing that you
matcha
can go
going
through.
on here.
Go through your stuff, but it was one of those where I was like, I don't know if that camera is literally just a video you took and it's the exact same.
It is.
Or-
Yeah,
okay.
it's saved. Yeah.
Well, so, and what's so stupid is I've tried to figure out from the swirl pattern of you swirling it. I was like, is it the same swirl pattern? I can't figure out. And I was like, I'm so stupid with this that I'm trying to figure out if this is literally stock footage or if this is actually your
It's actually
tea that you're
mine.
drinking.
I made that one day. I just had to
Well,
get that
yeah,
swirl right.
But that's what I was trying to figure out is like, okay, like I'm a creature of habit. Like I don't want to dirty up a ton of dishes. So like I could totally see you being sort of like I am, where it's like, all right, this is my one cup for this, and I'll just keep reusing it and making the same thing
right.
in it.
Matcha
Did your
cup.
wife make that?
No, she didn't. But it does look like something she would make. I think that's why I liked it so much. She makes smaller cups, but I bet she would make a bigger one for me if I asked her.
I think
it used to be a honey pot. See how it's got a pour section in the front? And right here used to be a little round thing that you can put like a little honey section on, or what are those things called?
Was that actually green from the tea that's been in it, or is it actually that color on the inside?
It's green from the tea. It's brown usually.
It's so weird. Like I said, I've been really going more into the route of teas and loose leaf teas and stuff, and I don't really talk about it a whole lot because like I tend to find people don't really give a shit about tea. Like when I've kind of talked about it with people, they're like, "Eh." So I knew when we were doing this, I was like, it's the one thing I pretty much never get to talk about on this. Like, you know, I've had people talk like sommeliers or however you say it. I can never pronounce that right. But talking about wines, I've talked about beers, I've talked about spirits and so forth. But it's like the one thing that I've kind of gotten into in the last like couple of years is that.
You should try some of it's called Lapsang Shung, I think. I don't know how to spell that too well. I might be pronouncing it totally wrong, but it's like as far as the tea goes, it's a Chinese tea. And it's like it kind of tastes like firewood.
Okay.
Like it's got a really burnt, smoky flavor to it. And it's
So almost kind of like a bourbon-y flavor profile. Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
That
sounds good.
It's like a black tea.
Okay.
a good place that I like to go to, obviously, is, I don't know if you have a Japanese market around. Japanese have a lot of good teas. Like I said, that one Genmai Cha is it's got toasted brown rice and popcorn in it, which you think sounds so odd, and then you have it and it's like, this is really fucking good. There's a twig tea. Oh my God, there's so many different types of teas that are amazing.
What if you were to create your own tea that would be, Jepha tea? What would it be? What would you taste like as a tea?
Oh man, that's tough because I love jasmine. I love oolong. I love I like strong teas though. You know what I mean? Like I like it to be a little like thick and dark, So I don't know. Mine would have to be one that would change per season. Because I wouldn't want to get sick of one flavor and one type. You know what I mean? Even though I drink a shit ton of matcha daily, I can make it different a little bit each time. And it kind of counts. But yeah, it would be too impossible for me to have one like a Lord of the Rings, a Lord of the Teas, one tea to rule them all.
I think that's been the interesting thing sometimes when you ask someone that question, like when you prose, like if you were a thing that does not have any personality, I guess technically is not personified in anything, what would you be? It's always interesting to kind of see where people go with it. And to me, what's interesting is, and I'm kind of like using sort of therapy brain here, sort of to kind of draw an analogy or an allusion to something. But it's funny that for someone who self-describes himself as kind of being shy and quiet, that your tea is strong.
Yeah, it's exactly the opposite, I guess. Oh. My wife is strong too, so I guess that's how that works. I like things around me to be strong.
What's the old saying? Iron sharpens the iron.
That's got to be it, right? I'm trying to learn from being around all of them so much,
Actually, an actual last question for you, and then I'll have you plug whatever you want online. So kind of going back to the Mickey Mouse on the cross thing. What does it mean to you?
What's the Mickey Mouse on the cross mean to me? Mm-hmm. I feel like, so I'm not religious at all. I don't, and people you get what you want out of some of these religions. I don't want to, here's the thing, I don't want to be disrespectful. So it's really me trying to choose my words correctly. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like, Christianity had its moment, but I feel like it hinders a lot of things in ways. And please, nobody take offense from me saying this, obviously, because I don't mean to offend anyone's beliefs. You could believe whatever you want and you can get as deep into whatever you want, but imposing it on other people is the problem, right? Mm. You shouldn't be imposing your beliefs on other people when they're beliefs, Facts are different, obviously, and you shouldn't be imposing facts, but you should care for truths, But when it comes to stuff like religions and it comes to being forced religions upon me, I feel like it's tough because I don't want to be disrespectful because I know other people listen and I don't want to hurt people's feelings. So I'm really trying to choose these words carefully. So maybe I should. I don't know if I could even say it. I feel like I'm going to upset someone so bad. But that is a figure. That's a cartoon figure that is being sacrificed right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
All I want to say is maybe the life of Brian did have some kind of a meaning to it. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, you'd probably catch that. But sometimes, I'm all about history and researching the past and trying to understand what happened and why it happened and how the future can be and researching the future, and when people get too stuck on right now, trying to think how someone lived back then and trying to understand what was going on thousands of years ago by a book that was written and rewritten over thousands of years, It's kind of hard to understand and to be able to put yourself in the place of the person thousands of years ago, what was going on, and the people that were allowed to write the book even, or just however it came into existence. Like, who actually wrote that book?
Right.
Jesus, no, but again, you can believe however you want to have that exist to now. But I just think maybe not imposing beliefs of something that happened forever ago on people nowadays. Man, it's really hard to choose your words carefully when it comes to religions and not upsetting people. But you know what I'm saying?
I just went through this with my dad because he sent me a video because they found religion, and it's been sort of a sort of non-talking point between the two of us. Yeah. And I didn't have to. I chose to watch a video he wanted me to watch and have a conversation about it. And at the end of it, the conversation started with, or toward the end of it, it was because the whole crux of the thing is why I believe in the Bible and you should too. And that's, and it talks about the different people who wrote it, and all the things you're hitting are talking points in this thing. Yep. And after the end of our conversation, my dad finally was just like, well, it doesn't seem like it really changed anything. It seems like, you still don't believe. So like, I'll just bring it to the simple question of, do you believe in a God? And I go, I don't know if I can believe in a God. And I go, but I think the hard part is I feel like I just have a problem with the idea that if any of the gods that you want to talk about are all supposed to be pretty forgiving, loving, and all these things. And I go, but I have a hard time believing that the people that won't ever know about this person, when the end times come, whatever that looks like, that person, your God, the other gods, whatever, will just be like, well, fuck those people and they go to hell. And I'm like, because I don't believe that. I don't think that's how that works.
Yeah.
And I was like,
they can't all be the one true God with all their different ideas and all their different, way of practicing it.
Yeah.
Yours is wrong.
Yeah. And the only talking point in it that I've kind of latched onto as an interesting thought point, though, is like the person and my dad prosing this to me, which was, even if I live my whole life and ends up not being true, I'd rather have lived that way and been wrong versus not lived that way and been right. Like, basically at the
fucked then, right?
Well, that's when I kind of said, I was like, my biggest hang up too is, so I have to obey these words and these things because someone sacrificed for me. And then my reward is I get to go to heaven and basically be a servant to this person. I was like, that doesn't sit really well with me either.
What I really think should happen is, I think, and again, I can't just talk and just say things, and I get it.
Well, that's why I'm trying to like take some of the heat off of you.
Yeah. What would be nice if, so let's say there was a religious class in schools I'm not talking about church and state. I'm talking about a religious class where you could learn all of the different religions. You can go through each one and just have a peek on all of the different religions. So
can I stop you there for just a second?
Please do.
I think based on, and someone correct you or whoever in the comments, correct me if I'm wrong. I know some religions, like a girl I dated, her mom was in the church. We went to church a couple of times, and she taught like youth church or something, like a class. And that church, I think at 13 or somewhere around there, you could leave, go, outside of your religion, your faith or whatever, and either just kind of go get life experiences or go into a different religion if you so choose. So I know some do that, but then my thought is, but you have more, like at that point, you're not really old enough to understand a lot of these things. But secondly, you spent your whole life in one system, and you think that giving someone like a year or a few months to go experience anything else, and they're not going to go back to what they know because it's comfortable. Like that's also setting people up to kind of not fail, but like keep them in.
Totally right. Totally. Like you're not learning enough to leave. You're just learning a little bit to be like, oh no, see, you were correct the whole time.
Right.
Yeah,
so I don't know if other religions do that or just Christianity.
Yeah. It's the hard part is when you're already in that religion from birth because your parents forced that religion upon you. And I will say forced in that sense because you didn't really have a choice, unless you did, which is probably pretty rare, obviously, I mean, I grew up in a really religious state.
I was just going to say.
I wasn't Mormon. I wasn't religious, but all the people I knew were. My whole high school was, my whole junior high was, like, it would be like high 90% people were Mormon, just because of where I grew up. But watching I've seen some kids do the most fucked up shit, you know, and you see that all the time. You know, it doesn't matter if you're religious or not religious. You're not going to be a better person just because you're religious. Although some people do need that religion to be a better person, which I understand too. You know, some people use that as, I don't want to say a crutch because that sounds terrible. That's not what I mean. A guideline, like someone is a really bad person and they found God and all of a sudden they're a good person because they're doing good stuff for other people. You know, that is cool. They figured out a way to get better. You know, they're using it to help themselves up out of the dirt. I totally understand that. But I just think there's got to be you can't hold your religion over other religions, and you can't think that your religion is correct over all of the other religions. You can't look down on these people for believing in what they believe in, you know. But then again, obviously there's societal, not suicidal, but there's societal things that obviously are not PC that shouldn't exist. You know what I mean? And so if that's part of religion, then that's fucked up. That shouldn't exist. You know, I'm going to not get into what those are, but people need to be held accountable for whatever that happens, you know, in that sense.
Yeah.
Dark. We went dark today. A little too much.
Well, I mean, it was funny because as I've been staring at that piece behind you, it's interesting because like I've kind of drawn a couple of ideas of what it kind of means. Like one is almost sort of sacrificing your innocence. And I don't know what for, because like the first thought I had when I had that idea was actually the scene in not Up. What the fuck is that other movie? The one with all like your emotions and all that kind of stuff, like the inner, like your anger, rage. God, what the fuck is that movie? Inside Out? Is that what that was?
I don't know if I've seen
the Pixar movie.
I don't think I saw it, unfortunately.
Okay,
I watched
good movie.
horror movies.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a good movie though, but at one point in the kind of spoilers, as they in the beginning, there's sadness, and everyone tries to make sadness not happen because they think it's a bad emotion. So, like I said, there's anger, happiness, sadness, and I forget what the other one is, but they have these marbles or these things that build in this person's life, the children and everybody really, but they have certain moments and they collect and all this kind of stuff. But the teaching point toward the end is when they're because they've accidentally kind of fucked everything up, and so the good, like happiness and sadness and someone else are all trying to like get back to where they came from. I'm poorly explaining this, but at one point they find a memory of like this child's first like imaginary friend that she no longer has because he's not needed. She grew out of it. I might cry talking about this because it's so the symbolism of it is so huge. They try to get back to this out of this area, and the character's name is Bing Bong, and
that's a great name.
He gets off this cart because he realizes he weighs too much for the rest not to make it, so he sacrifices himself to where he'll never be a part of this girl's memory anymore, so that she can have more, and that the rest of these happiness and sadness or whatever can get through and can go on their journey. And it's one of those where you're like, oh my God, that's so profound. Of like, sometimes you, like I kind of like we were saying earlier, sometimes you have to get rid of things in order for you to grow and become more of who you're supposed to be as you get older.
Totally.
And so the loss of an imaginary friend, the loss of the imagination, the loss of innocence and your youth and all that kind of stuff kind of being represented in that. That's sort of one of the first things I kind of thought of when seeing that is sort of like, doing that, like growing up and kind of sacrificing your youth for your adulthood, maybe, or in a different context, worshiping false idols and so forth, and not understanding what really is behind all of them.
I like your take on it a lot, honestly. Like it's very fitting for that. It's probably better. Your take on it is the best take. My take is anger coming up from growing up, and which at the same time, your take is what I should be doing. I should be putting that emotion and that feeling in the fucking garbage and moving past it. You know what I mean? Growing up out of that emotion,
Maybe it's just because, like I said, I rented that dumpster and I went through it literally, figuratively, and emotionally. Got rid of all of the baggage that I've been carrying around in this house for the last 12 years. That gives me that perspective now. But for you, again, man, goes back to differing perspectives. But where can everyone find you, or anything you would like to plug online?
I do a little fun Twitch stream that you've been to a couple times. It's a lot of fun. It's called Grass Destroyer, and it is not a weed joke. Grass Destroyer has nothing to do with weed, which it would have been funny. People. It would have been funny as a weed thing. I just didn't think of it, so that's why I'm being totally honest right now. It has nothing to do with weed. It had to do with me destroying my grass at the time, because I don't have a green thumb. If anything, I have a brown thumb, I guess. What would you put? That's terrible to say that one. But it doesn't fit. Everything dies. So everything I have that's a plant doesn't live long enough to be a plant anymore. Grass Destroyer is a lot of fun. It's pretty much just a hangout. It's pretty much what we've been doing here for the past 2 hours. It's pretty much one of those. And it changes. That's the hard part about being a musician and living all back and forth and having to tour all the time is my times vary. But you can check out. I have a Twitter that's called Virtual Jepha. Clever. So just virtual in front of my name, and same as my Instagram. It's the same thing. But we also have a Discord that you can check out, and you can just find that through either my Twitter or my Instagram or actually the best thing is just go to Grass Destroyer. You can find it all in there.
It's funny. I always want to utilize my Twitch to do these, but I'm always I feel like there's something more comfortable for the guest to know that it's not live. Know that if you are at a loss for some words or whatever, that it's fine. Because I tend to find that the few I've done, like I did one with Porter actually, and we went 2 hours roughly that I was like, okay, we're done. I feel like we're done. But then in total, we went 6 hours doing this.
Oh, wow.
On his Twitch thing. And I think it's still up there, all of it. And
that's fun.
It was one of those, like in the Discord the next day, everyone was like, who's still riding the high from that? I could have watched another 4 or 5. And I'm like, really?
That's
like,
cool.
I know I can get along and keep talking with someone for a while, but I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't feel like that was 100% all home runs. It was like, kind of missed on that. That was like a couple innings of score. Like from my perspective, where I was like, kind of maybe should have let that go instead of trying to beat that into the ground. Oh, that was that. Then it got good though. Then it kind of lulled again, then got good again. But to see people just be like, oh, it's so cool. And I think more like you'll probably understand of like seeing the interaction live where maybe it spurns other talking points is interesting. But like I said, I always want to do it, but very much like you, I'm so not on a consistent time schedule. And I feel like it would just be so hard to get someone to be like, we set this up 2 days ago, but something could change. So I don't want to like spend the advertise. Like, I don't want people to be like, okay, it's happening at this time on this day. And then if something changes, people are like, oh, like we can't rely when you say that something's going to happen. It's going to happen when it does. So it's
very difficult.
Yeah. I should just start throwing these up after the fact and just being like, hey, if you want to come watch the thing.
That's true too. Just be like, hey, it's happening now. Here it goes.
Yeah. And it already happened, but I'll live chat with you while it's happening.
That's cool too.
Yeah. Maybe I should start doing that. I have all these videos. So like, why not? Well, thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day. And apologize to your wife for me that I kept you longer than we were expecting.
No, dude, it was good. I really appreciate it. It was a good chat. I appreciate your views. So thank you so much, man.
So that was my conversation with Jepha of The Used. Again, want to thank him immensely for the time. I know he was gearing up for some shows. The tour that's happening, actually, I think right now, as I'm when I'm recording this. I'm going to try to go to actually, it is the last date of the tour. It's in Detroit. Hopefully going to go, maybe link up with Jepha and maybe Brewtallford. I was actually talking about him the other day with Mark from Nothing More when I was giving them a ride back to their bus. The road we were on was called, what was it? Buford, that's what it was. And I was like, oh, Brewtallford. And we talked about how great of a guy and all the guys in The Used are. But want to thank Jepha for taking the time. This was, I feel like a long time coming, like I said in the intro, and just one of those guests that I've really wanted to have on and lived up to the expectation, and far exceeded it actually for just the vulnerability and honesty in which Jeff opened up on the episode. So I hope you enjoy this. I'm going to start wrapping up this episode because the episode was so long. If you would like to keep up with Jepha, you can find him, as he said at the end there, at Virtual Jepha on Instagram and Twitter. If you would like to keep up with The Used, you can find him on Facebook at The Used, Instagram at The Used, and Twitter at We Are The Used. If you want to go, there's not really a website for Jepha, but I would say if you really want to support him, follow him on Twitch. He's probably not doing a ton of it right now, just because he's on tour and the setup is probably a little bit wonky to try to do. But if you do, when he gets back on tour, it's a lot of fun. Twitch.tv, Grass Destroyer. I do want to say, since we talked last, I have stocked up more of my tea. And I've got quite a nice little collection now. I've been going and getting the loose leaf teas. It's almost like going to buy like legal weed, kind of like where I'm like, can I get a half ounce of that? Can I get an eighth of that, basically? But it's one of those. I ended up picking up some new teas, and the other day, you'll actually hear me talking about it in the episode I did with Andrew Wells from Idola / Dance Gavin Dance. The one I tried recently that was stupidly delicious is this blood orange smoothie tea. It is a Rubios. I'm still not certain how to pronounce some of these things, but it's a caffeine-free tea, super delicious, super creamy, super just a really great tea. I got some other ones. I got a pumpkin spice chai the other day. I got a creamsicle delight, which is a black tea, which I'm excited to get into. And then I got this interesting one. It's a watermelon cooler, and it's more of an herbal tea. But the way that it looks almost like granola. Whereas a lot of the other ones are kind of more obvious loose teas of sorts. But I've upped my tea game. I know summer isn't really the time to be drinking tea, but fuck it, I'm gonna do it anyway. But I'm very excited about it. I was thinking about it when I was actually there because we had just done the chat, and then like a day later I was out looking at some teas. So I strongly encourage everyone to get into it. I mean, I know I talk about drinking a lot, and I do like drinking, but I tend to find that enjoying a nice cup of tea while you're watching or just doing something has been a lot of fun and enjoyable, and it's interesting just to kind of get into different creative flavors of a completely different kind. So with all of that said, if you would like to keep up with the podcast, it's simple enough. You can go to brewspeakpod.com. You can go find us on BrewSpeakPod on all of the socials. Like, subscribe, favorite, retweet, whatever you want to do. We will appreciate anything. Leave a review if you can. If you'd like to help us out monetarily, you can go support us over at Patreon, patreon.com/BrewSpeakPod. And for the Brutally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I will talk to you all next week, where we have Devin Shelton as the guest, slowly collecting all the Emery guys. That was a fun chat. Haven't really gotten to talk to Devin very much. In spite of all of my interactions with Toby and Matt, Devin is kind of the outlier of the trio that usually tours and does the house show tour basement thingies where they come here. So it was kind of cool getting some one-on-one time with Devin and getting to kind of find out more of who he is. So join us next week as that's our guest, and I will see you all then. Have a good week.